Can you write songs that are more like Alkaline Trio? Those guys are getting really like, hey, you guys should write more songs like Jimmy Eat World. Those guys are like, then go fucking sign Jimmy Eat World, asshole. The fuck do you want from me? I'm not those guys. I didn't live that life. I didn't grow up in that scene. It's not the music. I don't want to play emo music. I don't want to play, like, if I turn my distortion off on my guitar, something's wrong.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we start, tomorrow night is my Lane Meyer show with Midtown at Starland Ballroom in Sayreville, New Jersey. If you have tickets, I can't wait to rock out in front of you. And if you don't have tickets, I think there's still some available. You can go on like StubHub or something like that, or people have been commenting on Instagram who have tickets, so you might want to go check that out. But yeah, I'm super fucking excited for this. And so I guess next week I'll be doing a little post about that or an intro about that before the podcast and saying how it went. Dynamite Boy was a pop punk band from Austin, Texas. You can check out my other interview with Adrian at episode 103. And then Sean reached out to me through Instagram and was like, hey, dude, I really like that interview. If you want me to fill in some gaps where Adrian didn't really know what the hell he was talking about. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say it like that. But then he was like, yeah, I'd love to come on. So I was like, fuck yeah, dude. And so we coordinated and I got him on the Skype and this is what we chat about. The original Dynamite Boy members, the tour with the Impossibles, kicking out Craig from the Impossibles, getting influence from bands about running the band, Tom Petty getting them on Fearless, having massive stage fright, his relationship with Bob from Fearless, Matt Riddle, what's his relationship like now with past members, and a ton more. Lastly, if you need an explainer video to explain what your company does, I do that with my company, drive80.com, drive80.com. I can explain what your company does in 60 to 90 seconds with animation, so if you want to check that out, go to the website, or you can email me at mike@drive80.com. And the other way you can support me, besides doing that, is you can do the Patreon, patreon.com/thiswasthescene. It's $1 a month, which equates to 3.5 Starbucks coffees a year. With inflation, that's probably like 1.5. So you can go do that as well, and it'd be greatly appreciated. That's all I got to say, so feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started.
Luckily, at my current job, I'm a producer at a board game company, and so I do interviews occasionally for stuff that I do on there, so I'm usually pretty careful about it these days.
What's the board game? Oh, wait, what are the board games you put out?
I work at Funko Games. Yeah, so Funko Pops are the thing that it's a toy company that they do like the little collectible figures that have like kind of the cubic heads and the giant black dead eyes on them or whatever.
Yeah,
thousands of them at the store when you go there. So I actually work on a game for Marvel, and I work on kind of a lead for a division there where we just do like games that are like little collectible games and things like that.
That's awesome. Was this something that you kind of like were passionate about when you were younger?
Oh yeah, I came from So when Dynamite Boy broke up, I think before the band even broke up, by the time I'd announced that I was going to stop touring, I started working at video game companies in Austin. Just because that was something ever since I was a kid. It's just a thing I've always video games and things like that were things I'm old enough to remember. Like I had my Atari 2600 back in the late 70s and all that stuff. So I remember late 70s, early 80s. So I kind of grew up with all that, and then music took me away from it. And then when I stopped doing music, I went back to it again, kind of.
Oh, that's fucking good. Yeah, I love when people have some passion about something when they're younger, and then later on in life, they're like, yeah, I just went and did that instead of.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like I do things now that like my parents, my parents would yell at me for doing when I was a kid. Quit screwing around, quit playing that D&D or whatever that is, whatever that thing is. You're like, same thing when they would tell me like, oh my God, I'm so sick of hearing you practice your guitar or whatever. It's just like the same thing, and you're just like, well, fuck it, then I'm going to turn it into something I'm going to do for a living if you don't like it.
I feel like you kind of need that maybe if you're like, I'm very go against the grain. If someone tells me no, it makes me want to do it even more. Maybe it's like the universe's way of like pushing you. It's like you actually need this instead of the supportive side of what the parents really needed to give you.
Yeah, absolutely. I started playing guitar, and my interest in music was driven by when I was in was it sixth grade, seventh grade? Oh no, fifth grade, like fifth grade. So I guess I was 10 years old. Now think about this for a second. I was 10 years old. I was transferring, going into middle school. And before you went to middle school, they had there's only so many spots to play in like the band or whatever, in school. and I wanted to play in the band. I was interested in music. So they have like this little test, like a little thing that you would take just to see whether you would like. They only had so many spots. This is in Chicago. I was born in Joliet, outside of Chicago, and so I grew up till I was 12. I lived out there, and so like there was only so many spots. It was like the middle school was fed by like 8 elementary schools or something. So it was like a huge school. So there's only so many spots to get into these classes. So I took the test, and they basically came back and said I didn't have the aptitude to play an instrument.
Jesus. And
so I think for me is exactly what that was. It was just kind of like, well, fuck you. I'm gonna make a living out of it for a while. Like that's what I'm gonna do. So from that point on, it really became like this like mission of mine to start playing music. And when I was 13, I got my first guitar. At 85, I got my first guitar for Christmas. And when I started playing guitar, it was the same thing. It was like my dad got it for me. I couldn't get him to buy me an instrument because, when you're that age, there's also, it's like the flavor of the week. The thing I'm going to try this week that cost my parents $500, or whatever it is. And so I had kind of plotted out this plan to get my dad to buy me a guitar by going to my cousin. I stayed with my cousins that summer, and my cousin had a guitar, and I had him teach me a couple songs on it. So when I got home, I wanted to like just pick up a guitar when we went to the store or something with my dad and just be like, oh, look, I just like naturally know how to play these songs. Oh my gosh, I must be some kind of savant. And my dad was like, wow, I can't believe you can actually play some songs on there. And I was just like, so I was kind of how I fooled him into buying me some cheap ass guitar. But then eventually I think he regretted that when it became like my obsession after school every day for 4 years or whatever.
I always love asking this question because I like to see what the responses are. Do you have kids?
I do. I have a son who just turned 15, which is insane.
Jesus. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Tell me. And interestingly enough, I'm going to see him play in his first concert in a band. He's playing bass in a band at school on like December 13th. They're going to go play. I heard him practicing in his room the other day, and I came in the room and I was like, "Are you playing Sabotage?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm learning. I'm singing and playing this for the band, the performance thing we're doing in December." I was like. And it's one of those things where you have to be like, oh, okay, cool, and not just like go in the other room. I was in the other room like going, fuck yeah,
yeah.
I did a good job.
Well, that's a funny thing, man. It's like that comparison of our parents or the people I had talked to, what their parents said to them, and then I see the responses when I ask that question of the people I talk to now about to their kids, and they're always like I talked to Rich from Vagrant, and he has got like 4 kids, and I was like, do you instill this in them? He's like, oh my God, I just totally. Given that open road or like that total support that I really wanted to get. So it sounds like a lot of, the people I talk to, they're like, oh my God, I totally am just so stoked when my kids want to do something that's, not the normal of what we were told when we were growing up is what we should do.
Yeah, absolutely. It's making up for that support that I felt like maybe at times was lacking from my side, but then you have to be careful not to be overly eager about it, because that will have the opposite reaction where they're like, ugh, I don't want to do this. Like this is my dad's
dad thinks this is cool.
Yeah.
Fuck that shit.
My kid, like, he's heard my band. He's heard Dynamite Boy, right? Like he's heard that stuff, but he doesn't like listen to, now he listens to like he listens to Green Day. He listens to kind of a pretty wide variety of music, but he listens to stuff that I'm like, this is completely adjacent to like what I did. You understand that, right? Like the bands you're listening to, I used to play with.
I think that's like one of those things though, where later on, I think when he's probably like 18 or 20s, he might be like, holy shit, this is cool now.
Yeah, I just keep waiting for that to happen. Eventually at some point he'll be like, Dad, you really were cool when you were younger. I really wasn't, but it sure looked that way, didn't it?
So before we start jumping in this, you had messaged me and you were like, hey, I heard Adrian's interview and you're like, it was fun, but I could probably fill in some gaps. So what I want to do before we go down the path of the band starting again, because that episode was from yours is going to be like, I think you're going to be episode 200 actually.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yeah. And awesome. So his was 103. So this is going to be like, 97 episodes ago. So I couldn't even, I've talked to so many people, I couldn't even tell you, like I'm looking through the notes about what we talk about. So I was like, okay, I can kind of touch on some things, but I want to make a list, if you have it, of just like some bullet points that you want to make sure you correct, and then we can kind of lead up and go through them as this progresses.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's definitely the actual start of the band. Adrian joined the band about 2.5 years after I was in it. It was about 2 years after. I think he joined in like '97. So, and I had joined the band in '95. There's a couple of years there that I thought were good, and then there was some spots there. I think in those early days where he was a little like trying to remember how did we get signed to Fearless? How did we get there's those kind of little points in there where it was like I was listening to it and I was like, man, I can't believe like Adrian really he remembers a lot of this stuff.
He's really fucking this up.
But then he'd be like go back and I'd be like, oh wait a minute, I think he actually fucked the timing of that up. I think it's the reverse around, or this happened and that happened, and then the band was like a revolving door of members and stuff like that as well. There was a bunch of different. We had a lot of people that came in and out of the band over the years, and we were a band for. I was in the band for 10 years, but I guess the real like thing there is that like the band existed before me. So the Dynamite Boy that recorded albums and all that, there was a band before that none of the original members of the band were ever in.
Did he talk about that?
No, he didn't bring up any of that because that all kind of precedes even him. Because like the band even preceded me at that point, but. The band had never recorded anything, and had completely changed. When I joined the band, we completely changed the sound. I kind of took over and started wrote songs for the band, and we threw out all the old catalog that never got recorded.
Interesting. Okay, I always find that funny when there's bands that they start off with, even the bands that start making it, and then they have to change gear. It's like Norma Jean when what's his face, the original singer who was in the Chariot, now he's in 68. Josh Scogin. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he was the original voice, and then Corey came in after, and then Norma Jean like blew up. Or it's like Under Oath, where they had the original guy from like Maylene and the Sons of Disaster. Like he was the original vocalist, and then he left, and then they brought in what's that other guy's name?
Oh, I don't even remember. I didn't even know that. We worked tour with those guys, and I remember. I guess we were probably with the final iteration of the band because it was kind of when they were starting to blow up.
Well, sometimes like that, when a band they start and then the new members come in and stuff, it kind of just like the band starts going, we're kind of fucking this up, or we don't really have the energy to do this. But the fact that you guys started with completely different members and you took over, that's so interesting. So let's like start there. Like let's kind of start with how that happened and then how you came in and took the reins.
Yeah. So I was playing in. I started playing in a couple different bands in Austin, and I know Adrian touched on the fact how incestuous the Austin scene was at that time. This was been in like 94, 93, 94, 95, and it was like everybody in town was in 4 bands. The family tree was just like cross roots. Everybody was been. Oh yeah, I know that guy. I played in a band with him 2 years ago or whatever, and bands were forming and going away as fast as you could, name them. And so I was playing actually in a band called The Contradicts at the time. And it was like a ska punk band. I don't know. It was, we did all kinds of weird shit. There was like instrumental surf music, and there was like kind of oi punk stuff and like street punk. And then in ska. So it was kind of all over the place, but I was playing guitar in the band, and we kind of have a rotating cast of singers. Because I was always a guitar player. Like singing for me was never like, I was always like the side thing that I just I was made fun of a lot when I was a kid for singing, so I had a real anxiety about it. So for me, it was always like, no, I'll just play guitar. I'm fine with just like trying to master guitar. That's all I want to do. I want to be a lead guitarist. When I joined the band and I started singing backups, it was like kind of like mousily eking up to the microphone once in a while and singing backups, and realized I could carry a tune and I could harmonize pretty well. But in the band that I was in, The Contradicts, it just wasn't really like the kind of thing I would want to sing. It just was like I said, there was a lot of like street punk stuff. Like I was just like, I love playing it, but I was like, I'm not really that. I'm not going to make a dent on that kind of a band as far as singing goes, or writing lyrics or anything like that. And so I started kind of looking around for the band. So this would have been in the like spring of '95. I was at a party with this kid, Matt Greco, just what do you call it, like a shared friend, that was at the party. And so she introduced me to him, and we were talking, and he was like, yeah, I'm in this band, and our singer just left, and we're about to look for a new singer. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, I'm actually playing in a band where I play guitar, but I'm kind of looking at not playing guitar and just trying to sing for somebody. So I was looking at actually doing the opposite. I was like, okay, well, this way I don't create the weirdness of like, well, why are you playing in this other band and you're taking songs there instead of bringing them? I didn't want to create that weird stuff, that weirdness. So I was like, well, I'll just play guitar in this band and I'll go sing in your band. And I won't I won't play guitar. That way people won't be like, oh, it's, why are, you're kind of splitting yourself between these two bands. How do you decide which band you're going to, write a song for or whatever? So I went into a practice with them. And what's funny is the band that I was in, the Contracts, had actually played with their old band. So Dynamite Boy, before they were Dynamite Boy, was a band called, get ready for this name, it's not that awesome, was Yoda's Love Child was the name of the band. And they were like a funk punk band, so very influenced by like real early Red Hot Chili Peppers, prior to major label stuff, like when they were just like a super weird funk punk band. So they were doing stuff like that, and I was absolutely not down with that. That was not my vibe at all. So I was like, nah. So I had heard, he'd give me a cassette and I'd heard it, but after this, so they had let their singer go, but because the other guys in the band really were kind of more into things like 7 Seconds and the Descendants and bands like that. And so they kind of wanted to go in that direction more. So they were dropping a bunch of the funk stuff. And I was like, okay, well, you guys are dropping that, then I wouldn't mind coming in and, they had like 2 or 3 songs that I was like, well, I'll learn the lyrics to them and I'll come in. I didn't learn anything. I like listened to the songs and I was like, these songs are awful. I'm not even gonna pretend like I try to learn these things. I don't want to be in the band that badly. Like, I'll just come in and see if maybe come in and be like, well, what do you guys got? Maybe we can write something. And so that's what I did. My first practice, we came in and we wrote the song Background, which is on our first and second albums. It's on Hell Is Other People and on Finders Keepers. We re-recorded it on Finders Keepers, which was controversial thing, and both labels got kind of pissed off.
Yeah, no one really likes when bands do that.
No, the old label, Off Time, what's his name, from Horace Pinker, the drummer from Horace Pinker, it was his label. Brian from Horace Pinker. He got real pissed off about it, which of course he did. Like, but it was a good song. But we wrote the song literally like at our first practice. Like, I just came in and was like, hey, I've got these lyrics, stuff I've written down. Like, got anything you guys were working on? And they played the guitar riff, and then we just kind of worked through it. We spent 2 hours working through a song, and then after practice was over, the guys were like, if you want to come back, let's keep doing this. I was like, yeah, I'm down. So at that time, the band was this kid Matt playing bass, Andrew Leeper was the guitar player, and kind of at that time, really it was his band. He was the guy who kind of was really starting the band. He was the one who let the previous singer go and was looking at moving the direction more towards what he liked, which was just more kind of mid-90s pop punk stuff. And then the drummer was this guy named John Huckabee. That was it. So we got together, and that was like house shows, community center shows, all that kind of stuff. And I played my first show. We practiced for a few months, and I played my first show. We played in Houston, this place called I think it was The Abyss in Houston, with Latchkey Kids and Fourth Grade Nothing. Fourth Grade Nothing was a band from Austin. Latchkey Kids were from Houston. And we were good friends with all of them. We opened the show, and I did that one show with no guitar and was like, I will never fucking do that again.
Yeah, I was gonna say, were you hiding behind like the mic stand, or did you like free?
Yeah, so I have absolutely like petrifying stage fright. I still to this day, it's never gone away. It's the worst. It is the worst ever. And I got on that stage without the guitar, and the audience at the time, Latchkey Kids were they were a pretty good sized band out of Houston. So, I mean, they were at the club, they were drawing, I was probably 400 or 500 kids. And I was just mortified. It was the worst. I tried wearing sunglasses. I tried leaning on the mic stand. I was like, I was just like counting the seconds till it was over. I need the guitar to hide behind. I just need to have something in my hand, something that, I just don't understand singers. Like, I don't understand how you don't like, you don't know. I feel like, what's his face? Like Ricky Bobby. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I was just like, what the fuck? I don't like, what do? You just stand here with a microphone? It's such a weird thing to do.
Yeah, that's like a whole different animal, man. Like, some people can pull it off, and some people are like, oh.
Yeah, I'm no David Lee Roth, so it's kind of like I'm not owning the stage in any way. I was just like, shrinking as small as I could get.
So how many guitar players were in the band at this point?
So at that point, it was just Andrew. It was one guitar player. And so I went to Andrew, and after that show, I was like, hey, would you mind if I just played like some rhythm guitar stuff? And he was like, dude, you can play lead stuff. Like, I've heard you play. Like, I would love for you to play guitar. I just didn't think you wanted to. And I was like, oh, I didn't want to until we did this. And now I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. the guys in the other band, I think they could smell the winds of change were blowing, because as soon as that happened, they were like, and they could tell that I was like, okay, I'm writing songs with this band. I'll play in this band, play your songs, but I'm going to write songs in that band. And so it was a matter of time before, I think it was maybe like 6 months maybe, before I finally went to those guys and quit after a show one night.
That's a pretty decent amount of time.
Yeah, I gave it a good run, but the minute that I felt the freedom of being able to write whatever I wanted and didn't have to worry about the other guys in that band not thinking it fit in the style or whatever, I was like, I can go whatever the fuck I want to do over there. In this band, I'm kind of like, everybody wants to stick to a specific style or a specific genre or whatever, and it was just not really what I wanted to do. So I gave it a good run, but then I had kind of made the decision pretty early, and then it was just a matter of like the long breakup. And the band had changed names from Yoda's Love Child to Dynamite Boy before I had joined it.
I was going to say, I feel like that would have been a conversation. You're like, hey, can we get rid of this shit name?
Yeah. No, they had changed the name when they had kicked the singer. I think that was part of how they were trying to kind of wipe the slate clean. But it was the same group of people, and they were trying to bring over a couple of the previous songs, which, like I said, I was just not down with the songs at all. I think one of them, actually, on Hell Is Other People, there's a bunch of hidden tracks on the album. There's like 69 tracks, right? And so hidden throughout tracks 13 through 69 of sophomoric humor, of course. Between tracks 13 and 69, there's like 4 or 5 hidden tracks in there that were just recorded live in the studio the last day we were in the studio. And I think one of the songs is a song called B-Team that I think we actually recorded like a live version of it there. I don't even think we played the whole song, but I think we put it on the record just to make some of the people in Austin who knew the song kind of happy that it was on there or whatever. But
And this was on the first release?
Yeah, that was on the very first album, yeah.
How does this evolve because you were like, you were the only original member, right? And then everyone else got replaced?
So at that point, I was the new guy with 3 guys who were the original Dynamite Boy members. And so then the revolving door began. So the first person to leave was John. We did a 7-inch with John, a split 7-inch with the Impossibles called Not Hell's Other People. It's called God Can't Stop Us Now, or Even God Can't Stop Us Now.
Not even God Can Stop Us Now.
That's it, yeah. And that was a prophetic title, because this is where I think Adrian had heard stories about it and stuff. But this was the first tour. We did that 7-inch, which would have been in probably 96, summer of 96.
It says 97 it was released.
Oh, 97. Okay, so summer of 97, we went on tour. We did the 7-inch ourselves, got it pressed up, photocopied the covers at a Kinko's, made T-shirts that we bought from a dollar store in Matt's living room, and we're like, we're going on tour. So we got ourselves a copy of Book Your Own Fucking Life and started calling, like, okay, we're going to go from here to California and back. And so it's us and the Impossibles. So we got Gabe from the Impossibles' dad to rent us a 15-passenger van from Enterprise. No trailer. So 4 guys in that band, 4 guys in our band, and then we brought 3 roadies. So in total, 11 people, and all of our instruments and all of our luggage crammed into a 15-passenger van.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And then started driving across the country. And as we started driving across the country, the shows just started getting canceled. It's, random kids that have like a desktop PA they're going to put a show on in their dad's garage or whatever. And they're like, hey, Dad said I can't have the show. Sorry, guys. And so the tour just falls apart on the road. We get to California. We play I think we played 2 shows. We played a show at Al's Bar in L.A. Was that the only one? And then that was the only show in L.A. Everything else fell through. So we just were hanging out at this guy's house for a few days. And then we drove up to San Francisco to go play a show up there. The show in San Francisco got canceled on the way there. We played a show in Los Gatos. So there was in total 3 shows on the tour were actually played. Those 2, and then we played one in Vegas on the way back. But the big thing that happened on that tour, that was the thing where we really shouldn't have fucked with that title with the whole Not Even God Can Stop Us Now thing. While we were driving into Berkeley, California, we're driving down the highway. I'm sitting shotgun. My friend Judson was driving. And we see a car in front of us, and the hood on the car pops up in the air. Like it opens on the car, and then it breaks off and starts flying through the air. And I'm looking at it, and it's like a slow motion moment where you're like, wow, look at that. The fucking hood just flew off that guy's car. And you're like, wow, it looks like it's coming right towards our van. And then it's happening so fast that like it like slows down in your brain. You're like, holy fuck, it's gonna hit our van. And then it slammed into our windshield. The windshield came up and like I was shattered in glass.
Holy shit.
And then the guy took off down the freeway, and I told Judge, I was so fucking pissed. I was like, Judson, catch that motherfucker. And I was hanging out the window, like, and he's looking out the window because the windshield's shattered. He can't see. He's driving down the freeway after this guy, and we hit traffic, and the guy finally had to pull over. And I got out, and I was just, I was going to fucking kill the guy. I was so mad. And then,
Jesus Christ.
And then the guy,
wait. When it hit, though, was it flat, or was it like,
yes.
Oh, man, because if it was like coming at you where it was kind of vertical, that shit would have sliced your fucking head off.
Absolutely. Because it hit like the windshield, and then like the front right, whatever the bar between the windshield and the side window, it bent that in and smashed the windshield in.
Oh my God.
So we catch this guy, we get all, we get his information. He doesn't have any insurance or anything, of course, and we're like, he was like, let me just give you $100 or whatever, and we're like, fuck off. And in California, there's like at that part of the freeway right there, there's like call boxes because I think this is pre-cell phone. None of us had cell phones, so there were like call boxes along the freeway. So we had one of our friends run down. He was like trying to get in his car, and we were like blocking the door to his car. I was like, you're not fucking going anywhere, man. We're calling the cops. So he called the Chips, and the Chips cop showed up. He like takes the information, does a report and everything. We get a copy of the report, and we're like, okay, we got to get to we think we have a show we have to get to, which we don't even know at this point. It's already been canceled. So we're like, okay, we have to get to Berkeley and try to get up to the show in time. We're already running late now because of all this. And we get to Berkeley, we're like, let's stop at the Enterprise and see if we can get the windshield repaired or whatever. We get to the Enterprise, and we're like, hey, we really need to get somewhere. Can we get this fixed? And they were like, you guys need to calm down. This van wasn't even supposed to leave Texas. We're like, what?
Oh my God.
So yeah, so the whole, it was a fucking debacle. It was a debacle, to say the least. And we played one more show on the way back in Vegas in a cave in the middle of the fucking desert with a band called Boba Fett Youth and the Impossibles, which was a really cool show, but it was really, everything was so weird. We just wanted to get home. And that tour was over. It was like, I don't think any of us talked to each other for like 2 months or something like that, because it was just like, it was definitely a war to go through and come back. So that was our first introduction. And for some reason, we were like, fuck, that was awesome. We should try to do that again at some point.
I was going to say, I was like, what was like the thing where you're like, you know what, we should do that again?
I don't, honestly, I don't even know. I don't even know how. I was just normal. I was like, even with all the bad stuff, I was hanging out with my friends playing music, even if it was only 3 nights on the whole day. We'd bring our guitars in places and dick around and play around and practice and shit like that. So it still kind of felt like, I don't know, it still felt like, this is what I want to do. This is cool. Like, this is fun. I'm having a good time with my friends just playing music for, 3 people at Al's bar or whatever. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm doing it for myself. I don't really care who's there.
So, like, how does this start evolving where you guys start making it more, I don't know, like the band starts kind of coming together more, you're getting more attention, and then that leads to getting on, what was the label again you guys were on?
First label was Off Time, then Fearless was the label that we were on until we broke up.
So this tour, though, this was, let's see, because I'm looking at that was 97. This says it's the same year that Split came out. It says it came out the same year as Hell as Other People.
Yeah, and that's why I'm thinking the Split actually came out in 96, because what happened with the Split was the Split 7-inch was what we started sending to people. We sent it to like Fueled by Ramen and Off Time, and just a bunch. We started sending, the guys in the band were sending it literally like opening up a copy of Maximum Rock and Roll and getting addresses for bands and just sending them copies of our 7-inch and just saying like, hey, would you ever want to play a show with us? If we ever came through town, would you want to play with us? And just shit like that. That's that was networking, right? Like, this is not, I wouldn't say it's pre-internet, but none of us had computers. None of us were really online that much or anything. So really, like, it was phone calls. And when we came back from that tour, that's why I was like, I think that was in 96, because then when we came back from that tour, we started talking to Fueled by Ramen about signing us, and they were really interested. And then kind of at the last minute, they bailed on us and instead signed the Impossibles. There was a little bit of weirdness about that. I don't know exactly. At that time, I was trying to just be involved with the music side of it, and I was letting Andrew kind of be the business guy. He was the one who was like, his address was on all the demo cassettes and that kind of stuff, When we came back from that tour, though, John, the drummer, left the band. And so we had already made this guy, Scott, who played in a band named Spill in town. He joined, and he was a much better drummer, and he just kind of vibed with us better anyway. So
How old are you guys at this point?
oh, let's see. This would have been in 95. So I'd been 20, maybe 25, 24, somewhere in there.
Weren't you one of the older ones in the band? Or are you guys
Yeah, I
older?
was. Yeah. So at that time, I was kind of the same age. It was me and Andrew and all them. Andrew's probably a couple of years younger than me, or a year younger than me. And Matt was a year or two younger than me. And Scott was actually a year older than me. As those guys all left the band, I just kept replacing them with younger and younger people, and I became like the old man in the band eventually.
Did you just like take it over and just become your band? Because you're like you come in as a stand-up singer, then you're like, hey, let me play up guitar, and you're like, hey, let me start kicking you guys out.
Yeah, I in hindsight, I can say yes. At the time, I felt like no, this is just the natural progression of how this is going. But yeah, it kind of did. Like tyrannical leader, I think would probably, if you probably talked to a few of those guys, that's probably what they would say. I was just driven. I wasn't okay with sitting around in town. I didn't want to be fucking hometown heroes. So I wasn't interested in being the biggest band in Austin. I didn't give a shit about that. I just wanted to go on the road and play music. I didn't want to sit around in Austin. There was a lot of bands. Like I said, now Austin at that time, there was so many fucking bands. And everybody was just interested in being the biggest thing in Texas. And I was like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, who cares about that? I don't care about that. Like, it'd be nice. Yeah, sure. It'd be fun. It'd be cool to get recognized, in town as somebody who like is working their asses off. But I don't care about that. I don't care what people in Austin think. Austin is too busy being Austin. Like they're too busy trying to be the music capital of the world. I don't care about that. Like,
yeah, you're like, I don't need to headline emos every fucking time.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't care. I didn't play. That's and then so at that time, it's like a time when those clubs wouldn't even book us anyway. So there was definitely kind of, for me, it was kind of like well, fuck you guys then. It's like another moment of like, we can only play at like the rec centers and the shows that we put on, but the shows that we're putting on, we're putting 700 kids into a rec center or 500 kids into a rec center. Whereas these bands that are playing at emos are playing the inside stage in front of 20 people who don't give a shit about them. And so I was like, I'd rather go play in front of an audience that gives a shit about me. And these clubs don't want to book us because we won't play places that aren't all ages. So we're like, so some of the clubs at that point were transitioning from all ages to like 18 up or 21 up. And I was like, well, I'm not playing there. Like our fans are like, they're high school kids. Like they can't come to see us. I don't want to play with a bunch of fucking drunks. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of how I looked at it. It's like all the club cares about is selling booze, right? They don't give a shit about the band. They're just there to sell booze. The band is something to keep people in the room drinking booze. So I was like, I have no interest in being the biggest thing in that town. I think because of that, the other guys in the band also wanted to do that, but just didn't know how to get there. And I don't think I knew how to get there either, but I just think in general, the same way that I'm a producer now and for, and my game career and stuff like that, like I just kind of like said, all right, guys, if you guys get behind me, I'll take us on a ride. I don't know if we'll get where we're trying to go, but if you want to do it, let's go for it. And I'll figure out how to get us there. So that's kind of what happened. As people started leaving the band, when Scott joined, so then the lineup on the first album when we recorded Hell Is Other People was Scott, Matt, Andrew, and me. And then shortly after the album came out, Matt left the band, and that was when the whole story that Adrian told about Craig, we brought Craig from Impossibles in, and then he flaked on us, and so then I replaced him with Adrian.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. What was that story? Like, what was the top level of that again?
Adrian's version of it was a little funky because what basically happened was Adrian, we were playing in a whole bunch of other bands. This is another situation where it's like I'm playing in Dynamite Boy, and now I'm playing in two other bands, and one of them happened to be with Adrian. And he played drums in that band. That was the Cripples. Craig started saying he couldn't play shows. We started getting interest from clubs like emos and places like that wanted us to start coming and playing there. They were going all ages. They do all ages shows for us. They wanted us to play there. We got in really good with the booking agent, the girl that was there. She was really nice to us. And so we started wanting to play at these clubs. And Craig started like bailing on shows. He kept just like, hey, I can't play that night. It's my girlfriend's birthday. And I'm like, who the fuck cares if it's her birthday? Bring her to the show. I'll buy her a beer. I don't what the fuck does that mean? And so I asked Adrian one day, I was like, Adrian is like multi-instrumentalist. He's like, he can play guitar great, he can play bass great, he's an amazing fucking drummer, he can sing, like he's a great all-around musician. And as he said, he was like dropping out of high school to come tour with us and shit like that. But at that time, he was young. He was playing drums in the band, and I said, "Hey, would you want to come play a show with us on bass?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'd fucking love to do that." And I was like, "Let's just learn the songs." I was like, because there's a show that we got offered, it was with Mustard Plug, opening up for Mustard Plug at the outside stage in Emos, and it was like one of our first times being offered to play on the outside stage, which the inside stage was like a 200-person room or so.
Yeah, it wasn't huge. Like the new Emos is gigantic, but the old one is super tiny.
Yeah, and then but there was an outside stage at the old Emos that was like about like 800 to 1,000 people, right? So it was like one of our first times getting a chance to play a stage, and I was like, I don't want to tell booking agents no. Like in our entire career, in my entire time playing a Dynamite Boy, I can remember us canceling 3 shows ever due to me one time crushing all my fingers, another time me having the flu so bad that I thought I was going to die on tour, and then the third one was I don't know, I can't remember what happened. Anyway, but so because of that, I was like, I don't want to tell people no, because when you tell people no, they're not going to ask a second time, right? So I was like, well, we're going to play this fucking show. We're just going to play it without Craig. So we just stopped talking to Craig for a bit. He wasn't coming to practice. We were starting to practice with Adrian, and then the night of the show happened, and fucking Craig just shows up with his bass.
Oh, that's right.
And I saw him, and I looked at Adrian, and I was like, I'll be back, guys. And I walked over and was like, hey, Craig. I was like, what's going on, man? He was like, oh, just, got here. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, can we talk for a minute? and he was like, yeah. And I was like, we replaced you, man. Like, you quit coming to practice. You quit calling us. Like, we have this show. Like, what did you fucking think? Like, how are you thinking you were to come play a show and you haven't practiced with us in like 2 months? So it was really weird. I was kind of like, maybe he was so confident that he knew the songs that there was no doubt that he could just get up there and play. But I was like, yeah, we already replaced you. I'm sorry. Like, and Adrian played that show and he fucking killed it. It was the best. It was one of those moments where it was like, even at practice it felt good, but on stage it was like, oh no, this is it. This is what it's supposed to be. Like this kid plays exactly how I want him to play. Like he's not a bass noodler. I'm not a big fan of like bass noodling kind of stuff. Like I'm cool with good bass players, but to me it's more of like, if it was up to me, I would remove everything but 1 octave of notes on the bass and just make them play in that octave. Just say like, look, you play through frets 1 through 7 on 2 strings. That's it.
As you're talking to a bass player, I'm like, yeah, that's
yeah, right. I know. In hindsight, I've actually started playing bass in bands. I played bass in a band up here for a while, and now I get it. I'm like, okay, never mind. That's actually a really shitty thing to say. But Adrian is not that kind of a bass player, but he did it well. Like he was like, I think it was playing with somebody who was like in a funk band and playing with somebody who was like into like a heavy ska band. Like, I mean, not heavy ska, but Impossibles were kind of pretty ska sounding, at least in the beginning. That's a much more like walking bass lines and stuff. And I was like, look, we're playing like straight 3-chord punk rock shit, man. I don't need someone walking a bass line all the way up to the top of the neck. Just hold the rhythm, man. Like, my favorite band in the world is AC/DC. Just hold the fucking rhythm, Drummer should be so locked in that everybody else, there's no way we could be out of time because you guys are so in fucking step with each other.
Well, with having that and he comes in the band, is that like, because you're like, oh, this is now, you said something like, now we're like, this is where we want to be. So does that like kind of change everything for the band at that point moving forward, where it just became more dialed in?
Yeah, I think it became more serious. I became less of a joke and more of like hey, like we spent all this money recording this first album. I sold my entire record collection to master our first record. All these classic punk albums that I had to sell to Sound Exchange in Austin. I was serious. I was like, I'm living on people's floors, man. Everybody else is like, there's some, Andrew was going to university at the time, and I was literally couch surfing in between tours. So I was like, man, let's get on the fucking road. I don't want to have responsibilities and be tied down to anything. Let's just get on the fucking road and start playing. So for me, it was super serious. I was just like, this is my path to not have to go back to a 9-to-5 job and all this. Like, I can work when I'm home, but then when I'm on the road, I'm surviving on the road. So like, I don't ever need to come home if I don't want to.
Did you like listen to your songs that you guys were creating at that point and be like, this stuff is, what's the word I can use? Like, this is sellable, like that we can survive off of this and build off of this. Like, we feel confident that this is going to carry us through this thing we want to do.
That's a good question. I don't think so. I think actually I was, again, and I'm sure everybody is like this, I was really self-conscious about my songwriting and my singing and my guitar playing. So the whole time I was just worried that at any moment someone was going to pull the rug out from under us. Because, especially at that time, that wasn't unfounded to think that, right? Like record labels are dropping people left and right all the time. They just kind of ruled the roost. It wasn't like today where it's like, hey, I can produce and record my own album at home. I don't need a fucking record label anymore. So at the time, they kind of ruled the roost. So they kind of told you what to do. And I was nervous. So I was listening. So if you hear what happened on our second album, on Finders Keepers, that album is saccharine, sweet production. It's very sterile to me. And when I listen to it now, it sounds very sterile to me because the label, when we had signed to Fearless, I think Fearless was putting it in our heads, hey, this could be really sellable if you guys really cleaned up your act and, really like focused on writing super, super poppy songs. And so that second album is the one that I'm not going to say I'm least proud of it, but it's the one that is definitely the one I'm like, which would have been our first album on Fearless, Finders Keepers. I just to me, it was like a bad attempt at being what you just said. Like, how poppy can we be? How smooth can we make the production? And it ended up ripping all the like guts and rawness out of it. Because at the time, if you listen to our first album, the band was we were a live band. We could do the 3-part harmonies live. We did all the, it was very energetic. And so going in the studio was awesome, but it was almost like the second version of the band because people were trying to make it into this like, no, like you'd be totally radio ready. This is like, this is TRL world. You guys could be in, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, man. Like that doesn't really appeal to me either. Like I wouldn't mind being able to do this for a living, but at the cost of writing songs that are just kind of goofy. It's sometimes,
I think that's a good lesson though. In people, like everyone has, it's like, I think people second guess that what they bring to the table is meaningful. And I think everyone's gut instinct is what they need to do. Like if you feel, anytime I've done something where I'm like, I don't fucking think this is right, I get to the point where I'm going, what do I want it to do? And then once I do that, then it locks in and I'm like, oh, okay, like this is what I'm supposed to do. When other people are trying to guide you, you're kind of like, if it doesn't feel right to me, I'm like, fuck this shit. I'm not, because it's usually wrong if you try to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't, I made a lot of decisions in retrospect. I made a lot of decisions for the band on behalf of the band that I think maybe some of the other guys might have disagreed with or felt like it was shutting an opportunity down. But it was just because I was in no way going to let anybody outside of the band take credit for our success. That was really a big thing for me, was like, I don't want to listen to a record label like tout how amazing they are for discovering us. Like, fuck you, man. Like, I'm the one we're eating like literally like Wonder Bread sandwiches on tour every day just so we don't have to spend money so we can try to get gas money to the next city to play. Like, fuck off. Like, you don't. Yeah, anyway, I think a big part of me just wasn't going to allow anyone to take credit for our work.
Well, were you looking at like people that were surrounding you in bands or in the industry you were in and kind of pinpointing at someone like, I like how they do this. I want to take some notes from how I hear that they're controlling the band or the way they're working it, where you could say like, yeah, this reminds me of this It's like I can say like, oh, these are the bass players that influenced me. Was there like a band person who influenced your decision making?
Yeah, I'm sure I picked up on touring with bands like Strung Out and stuff like that, and seeing like tour managers and things like that. I would get like positive reinforcement of things that I was doing, but I think more so I would see bands that I was the opposite. I would be like, I'd see lots of bands that were doing things the way I didn't want to do them.
Like who?
There were bands in Austin that we knew. I don't want to name some of them because I'm, friends. I don't want to hurt them. There were bands in Austin that were doing things that were like signing with labels and doing stuff that I could see it happening. Like, oh, now all of a sudden, they were writing music like this, and then all of a sudden the songs all sound tremendously a lot like these bands that I hear on MTV right now. Like literally like overnight changes where it's like stylistic changes. It's like, oh no, it's like the new thing. Everybody's going to be everyone's going to put a screamo thing in one of their songs, or everyone's going to do this. And it was kind of like, I just didn't want to do that. So I would see that. As far as like my tyrannical overlord of the band, I don't think I had any outside of like Tom, you know what? Tom was a pretty big Tom Petty. I know you guys talked about when
I was literally thinking that because I know that you guys, because Tom was, we could talk about Getting on Fearless and what Tom's part was in that. But like when I'm thinking this, I was like, you guys were buds with them, and that's how Tom like ran the ship. He was like, this is the way I'm going to do it.
He probably is the biggest influence on how I decided that the hierarchy of the band should work was him, because he was the same thing as me. He was the main songwriter, lead guitarist and singer. Also the main business contact for the band. The guy was the one who always talked to the booking. That was all the hats I wore. I mean, literally, not to say the other guys didn't do anything, but they didn't have to do anything other than just kind of show up when it was time to play or time to practice or time to whatever. It was very rare that it was like I was being like, hey, can you guys book these things for me? Or can you take over this for me? I was a little bit of a control freak, so it was kind of like, no, I'll do it. That way I know it got done, and I know that it got done the way that I would have liked it to get done. So.
Did you butt any heads with like the guys, or did they just let you go with it? Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Adrian and I butted head a few times.
I don't think I remember him saying that. Did he say that in the interview?
Not in bad ways. I mean, it was always we were very tight friends. We had gone through so much shit already by that point. By the time we started seeing any level of success, we'd already been through a bunch of shit together. So it was like you kind of already had that war buddy thing, and it was like, all right, well, I still respected his thoughts and his feelings on things, and the band became a little bit more of a democracy. At one point we had filed as a LLC for tax reasons, so we would be able, once we started making enough money to where it was like, okay, we actually have to start filing like business taxes and stuff.
Yeah.
So we formed an LLC. When that happened, it became definitely more of a democracy. It was kind of more like hey, let's all decide together what we're going to do on this. But a lot of times they were, because I was so much older at that point, like I said, so after Scott left the band and we replaced him with Sam, and we had a kid named Mike that played in between as well, but they were both young, much younger than me, around Adrian's age. And then we had this Andrew left, and we replaced him with this kid Danny, who was around Adrian and them's age, and he was much younger as well. So by that point in time, I had a bunch of younger guys in the band, and I think they kind of looked up to me as like I was 10 years older than all of them, maybe 10 years older than them. I think they kind of leaned on it like, we got the old guy with us. He'll know how to do these things. You know?
Did it annoy you at all? Like our drummer was, I always fuck this up. He's like 5 years older than me, 4 or 5 years older than me. I forget. But like we were 18 and he was 23, so whatever the math is there.
Yeah.
And we would just make fun of him all the time. We would just call him an old man, even though he was like 23. Did they fuck with you like that?
I don't. Yeah, they did a little bit, but I think more often than not, it would be things like, "Hey, we're gonna go play. We just got done playing the show in Orlando. We're all gonna go out to this strip club, or we're gonna go out to this bar with the band. But before we do it, we got to get Sean back to the hotel." Because I was not a big road partier kind of guy.
Oh, okay.
So every night, for one reason, for my voice and my health, like it'd be really hard for me to like party all night and then get up and sing the next day. Like that'd be hard for me. And because of my stage fright and stuff like that, I would tend to overdrink sometimes to kind of help calm my nerves. And so there was a lot of like, I just, I kind of didn't feel great all the time if I went out drinking all night. It was like I needed to cut myself off. So there was a little bit of more like, we can all go out and have fun as soon as we get the old man back to the hotel. There was definitely, that was like a constant especially the last like 2 or 3 years of the band. That was just like, yeah, they were always just like, okay, let's get Sean to the hotel. We'll get him to the hotel, and we'll come meet you guys at blah 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 bar, and we'll stay out till 4.
Let's get Grandpa his juice.
Exactly.
Put him in bed.
Exactly. So I felt the responsibility, though. I think I took on like this, like almost like these younger brothers. That I was like, I got to take care of these guys. I felt responsible for them when we were on tour and stuff. So I think I was more nervous about being. I knew all their parents and shit too, and I'd be like, their parents are kind of entrusting me with these guys to come with me or whatever, I hope I don't I hope nothing bad happens to us.
But that's an important thing too, because I remember one time we were going to play a show. We were on tour, and I was talking to my girlfriend at the time. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll have a beer or two before I play. She's like, why would you do that? She's like, this is your career. Why would you fuck with that? And I was like, oh, I've never thought of that. And it's always stuck with me, because I never drink now. Even now when I play a show, like I never drink before I play, because I'm like, I want to get up there and fucking kill it, and then I'll drink afterwards.
That's how I am now too. And I think when I first started, I wouldn't, because I couldn't play drunk. I had this weirdness of like, if I was drinking while I was playing, I could play all night and drink all night. But if I was drinking and then playing, I was like, have no fucking clue how to play guitar anymore. It's like I can't flow. But if I was doing it in the action of doing it, I was okay. When we went on tour with Mest, Fall Out Boy, and Matchbook Romance, that was a tour where it was big shows, obviously, every night. And this would have been Fall Out Boy. They were supporting Mest on that tour. So this would have been right after their first album on Fubar. They had just signed to whatever the major label was, but they hadn't started recording the new album yet. But they were blowing up big time at that point. And so big shows, sold out every night, 1,500 seaters or whatever, every single night. Really big shows. And it was very nerve-wracking for me. And so on that tour, it was like a lot of like, okay, it's like timing it so that like I've got to be able to do just enough, just, 2 shots at just the right time. So when I get on stage, I can still play, but it also calms my nerves enough to not go up there and fall apart in front of everybody.
Would you be nervous the whole time you were playing, or was just the nerves, the pre-show nerve jitters?
After as long as the first song or two went okay, I was fine for the rest of the show. People would just be like, I tell people that, a lot of people that know me, I tell them, and they're just like, I never would have guessed. And I was like, yeah, I was real good at hiding it, but like, I still get it like really bad, even almost worse now, of course, because I'm out of practice. So it was only before the show, but say like the first song went wrong or something, couldn't get my power to work right, or one of my pedals went out, or I was getting shocked by the microphone real bad on stage, or whatever it was, it could ruin the fucking show for me. And then it was just oh my God, get me off of this. Like, let me get through these songs, get off this fucking stage. I don't want to be up here anymore.
So what is like the story that Adrian told about how you guys got on Fearless? Was it accurate? Were there any things that needed to be like?
Yeah, pretty accurate. I mean, the biggest thing was, so what we were on tour, and we had gotten up to New Jersey. Try to think who we were on tour. We were on tour with, I keep wanting to say, was it maybe Shyster? I think we had started the tour with Shyster, but by the time we got up to Jersey, we jumped on for a bunch of dates with, Bigwig, a bunch of dates around New York. We played like Coney Island High, and we played in all around Jersey and Pennsylvania with Bigwig, and then we took off on the rest of the tour, but then the rest of the tour fell apart. But what happened was, the story he told about Bob was totally accurate. Like, Tom got on the phone, woke up Bob in the middle of the night, and was like, convinced him to listen to our record to sign us. And Bob was, I think, only giving in because he really liked Tom, and he respected Tom's opinion, and was like, yeah, I'll listen to him. Just tell him to send me a record. I'll listen to him. Then Tom was like, no, like, you got to tell me you're gonna put something out. He's like, all right, look, I'll put him on a compilation or something. I'll say I'll do that. Just let me fucking get off the phone. So we were like, okay, well, at least we're gonna get a compilation out of this. So Tom, there is no doubt, like the story that Adrian told, that Tom went to fucking bat for Dynamite Boy. Like, there would not have been, I don't think we would have ever gone any farther than just like maybe a couple more years of shitty touring. We would have probably fallen apart. We needed somebody in our corner, and I feel that's like almost every band. You gotta. I feel like you always need to have somebody that like lets you into the clubhouse.
Tom had Jersey's ear big time, and so with that show we talked about when you guys played at the Bernardsville Church, like, I just remember that Tom was like your biggest fan, which sold it to everyone. I mean, I don't know. Can't. It's a bold statement, but him saying that, vouching for you, sold you guys to New Jersey, and it's like you have that person that everyone's like, oh, this is our band, and across the country, and especially Canada, Bigwig was gigantic. So with Tom in your corner, that really does bring attention to you guys.
Yeah, it was huge. And I think at the time, Tom was even trying, I mean, and I think in afterwards, we kind of found out a little bit more about it. And I think Tom was trying to kind of work into like kind of an A&R role with a little bit with Fearless. He was bringing a lot of bands in, and I think he brought Beefcake to Fearless's attention, and I think he was really in that realm. He was playing with a lot of bands, and kind of he's always been a very business minded person. So I think he was just trying to make sure that he like had all these different roles sealed up, so they always had something something going on, some kind of side hustle or something to help continue to support him so we could do it full time, whatever, with music full time, and it was huge. It was hugely helpful to us. And we kind of returned the favor. It was a little bit of a, like, when they came to Texas, by that point in time, we were kind of big in Texas. And so it was like, they would come out and play with us. And it was like, well, look, man, you guys come stay with us. We'll take you all around the state. We'll put you in front of a few hundred kids every single night, and it was kind of this trade-off. That became very similar. I'm sure you remember too, like back in the day, like that was a very normal thing to do. It was like, hey, you're regionally in Texas, you guys are really big, or Texas and in Louisiana, you guys are really big. we'll come down and play with you, and then let's go over to Florida and we'll find Blunt in Florida. And we'll all play with Blunt down there where they're huge. And then all three of us will go up to, up the East Coast to get up to Jersey and New York area where Bigwig's huge. And like we would play, you would go to these places and find these bands to be like, hey, let's try to cover our bases by having people who are decent sized in all these different areas. Because there was lots of local bands and stuff, but you couldn't count on local bands to ever promote their shows. A lot of times they were like, oh no, we're jumping on with this touring band. They'll bring all the people in. It's like, no, dude, we're coming to your town to play with you. Like,
yeah.
No one's coming to see us play.
Did you find like when you got on Fearless, did it give you like, I feel like every time bands just need these milestones to just re-energize them. So getting on Fearless, were you guys just on a high and then that like kicked you up even more, or were you like kind of like losing a little hope and then Fearless kicked you back up into it?
No, we were riding on that high. So what, right after we'd left, so the part that Adrian couldn't remember that I remembered was after we left Jersey, we were headed to Chicago, which is again where I'm from originally. So I went to go stay with a bunch of my family. We got to Chicago and it became very apparent we weren't going to make it through the rest of the tour. So we were at the closest point to Texas, because from there we were supposed to go all the way across the country up to Washington, down the West Coast and back to Texas. So we were kind of at a point where it was like, if we're going to go home, if we're going to cut and run on this tour, this is the only spot to do it. Like the tour is falling apart in front of us. Like we should go home now. We're almost out of money. And this is not going to be good. And we don't have a label to support us. Like Off Time wasn't supporting us. They had just put out our record, like a distribution more than anything. We weren't getting any money from a label or anything. So it was like, well, if we don't think we can make it, we should just get home. We should just go home now. So we let the booking agent know, and she was like, yeah, like there was only like 3 or more shows, and they're all kind of wishy-washy and haven't confirmed yet. And I was like, yeah, we're done. We're going home. But we went to the post office in Romeoville, Illinois, where my grandma lived, or my great aunt lived. Dropped off 2 copies of Hell's Other People in the mail and sent them to Bob. Priority mail, like overnight or whatever, Drove back home. So it was like 2 or 3 days later, we got back to Texas, back to Austin. 2 days later, I got a phone call from Bob and said, hey, I want to talk to you guys. When are you guys coming out to California? Do you want to come out this way? What are you guys looking for? And this and that. So I kind of gave him the lowdown. And then like 3 days later, there was kind of an intention contract in the mail for us to come do a record with Fearless. So it was huge. It happened really fast, and it was so invigorating because the tour just fell apart in front of us, right? So we were like, how many fucking times is this going to happen, right? Like we do tours, and it seems like as you're on them, they fall apart, and we can't get a good booking agent. We can't get all, what the fuck are we doing? We need something to change, or this is going to beat us up to the point where we just don't want to do it anymore. And Fearless at the time, we loved all the bands. It was like everybody was fucking great, and it was really weird because at the drive-in, which I think Adrian had mentioned, at the drive-in was on Off Time because they were out of El Paso, and that's where Off Time was based out of, was El Paso. That's where Brian lived from Horace Pinker. They had jumped to Fearless right before we went to Fearless. So it was like we had been on 2 labels at the drive-in, and absolutely nothing like our band. Like we've never played with them. I would never want to play with them just because it was like there is no crossover between our bands at all.
No.
And so when we did that, we were like, to us that was huge because at the drive-in came over, did like 1 or 2 things, and then they signed to Grand Royal and started getting really big, and we were like, oh shit, like Fearless is the next step. Like that is the next step from like kind of a nobody come more of a distribution label to like, oh shit, like these guys like can actually like get us on tours. Like the first tour they got us on was that Strung Out Whippersnapper tour. And I was like, well, fucking A, this was worth making the jump just to do this, right? Like we're getting on tour with, it was a Straight Faced, Strung Out, and Whippersnapper, I think. Again, a little bit, we were always, I think our problem was that at that point in time, we were always the black sheep because everybody was in like a Fat Record sounding band or something. Like someone like Bigwig was really good at adapting to different types of bands. We weren't so good at that. Like we were a great live band, but it was very, we were very sugary sweet, it's like songs about girls and shit. We were doing the very poppy pop punk thing. Even though live it was a little more aggressive, it still comes when you're on stage against someone like Straight Faced or Strung Out. Like it's like, all right, well those guys their audience wants to get up there and it's half the audience is like meatheads, and
Yeah,
The
go
other,
to rage.
and the other half is scared of the meatheads and don't really want to act like they like anybody. So there's a little bit of like a bunch of tours where it was kind of like, man, what are we doing? Like, we're playing with all these bands that don't really sound like us, which seems like it's a good idea. But then when you get on the road, it's like, but nobody else wants to hear this. There was a significant change in the late 90s where you could go to a show and see 4 bands and they sounded totally different, right? You could have like, hey, it's Mustard Plug and Groovy Ghoulies and fucking Sloppy Seconds and somebody else. And it's like, cool, I'll go watch all 4 bands. It's going to be so much fun. But then eventually there became this kind of homogenation that was like, well, when I go see At the Drive-In, I want to go see 2 other hardcore bands. I don't want to go see a ska band and a pop punk band with them. Everybody wanted to go see 3 or 4 bands that were all in the same genre, kind of doing the same thing. And so when that happened, we were still getting crammed on tours where it was like, hey, you guys be the opening act. And it's like, you mean the fucking punching bag sometimes?
Did you get that kind of reaction, though? Did you see, like, visually that people were not digging your sound if you're on bills that didn't match?
Yeah, you'd be in a crowd of 200 kids and you'd see 2 that don't like it, and that's the 2, of course, I'd focus on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, I definitely don't have the right. I would have to ask somebody else. I couldn't be objective about it because when I see one person in the audience that's not really enjoying it, it's hard for me to like go, oh, well, it's not for him. That's okay. These 3 people up front really love it though. Like, like I can't like ignore the one person that doesn't like it. I'm like, oh, fuck, what did we do wrong?
So one thing I want to touch on, just I don't know why I thought of this because you said when you got the contract from Bob. Looking back on it, because I'm always fascinated by the behind the scenes stuff. Like looking back on what they made you sign, was it a good contract?
Yeah, I think so at the time. For what it was at the time, I mean, I know what a lot of contracts are like nowadays, where they're like 360 contracts and stuff. So it's nothing like that. It wasn't super overpromising, which I think is really good because it made us still keep a work ethic. That's the thing I think if I was talking about other bands and other people that I knew that I would watch that were more cautionary tales to me. It's like bands who I would see that would get somebody and then start leaning on it. Oh, cool. The hard work is over, guys. We're on a label now. And the Fearless was more like, it was like a young fledgling punk rock contract, right? It was like, hey, we're going to do, I think Adrian had said he thought it was like a 3-record contract. I think the original contract was actually a 1 record with a 1 record option. And then when we were getting ready, when that first record, when Finders Keepers came out, before we were going to do the second album, Bob wanted to do another option. And we were kind of like, I'm not sure, but it ended up being a 3-record deal in the end. It wasn't like all at once. It wasn't like we're going to get one with like 2 or 3 options or anything. It was like one with an option, and then before he would even talk about doing the second record, he wanted to sign us to another option in case that album blew up or whatever. So because he was learning at that time how to run his label and his business, which after At the Drive-In blew up and they were shipping pallets of their CDs every week and trying to keep up with it.
Yeah.
They also started the whole smart punk thing at that around in the middle of all that, which was their like merchandise company.
Oh, they started that?
Yeah, that smart punk was
I didn't know that.
was Fearless. It was the same leadership as Fearless. I think it kept the record deal that we got from them. It kept us working musicians, which is what I appreciate it now. At the time, I might have been like, damn, I wish we could get like get an advance or something so I don't have to work when I go home. But instead of doing that, I was like, well, fuck it. The other way to not work when you go home is to just stay on the road. So we would start doing like 8 months a year touring, like just nonstop. Go out for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, come home for a week. Go out for 3 weeks, come home for 2 weeks. Go out for 8 weeks, come home for a week. Like it was.
Who in the band got burned out by that?
Let's see. So first one to get burned out would have been Scott, the drummer. He and I had a big fight. He left in the middle of the tour. Actually, I got into almost into a fist fight with him.
What was that about?
Just tour pressure. I think got to a point, and I was about to snap. And I had a real bad temper when I was younger too, so it was really easy to set me off on things like that. I was under a lot of pressure that by the way, I put myself under. Nobody put me in that pressure. It was me going, no, I'm in control of the band. No, I'll be in charge of our booking. No, I'll be in charge of talking to our manager. No, I'll be in charge of talking to the label. So I put myself in the position, but the stress and pressure I put myself under, I think, made me kind of a dick to deal with. Me and Scott just had a falling out, and yeah, I pulled over to the side of the road and was like trying to get the guy out of the van. I wanted to fight him. And it was just over stupid shit. Like stupid, like a dumb under the breath comment or something like that while we were all tired and we're broke and hungry. And we woke up the next morning, he was gone. He got on a plane and left. And so we were on tour with Junction 18 at the time. Junction 18 and us were playing the next night in the back of a tattoo parlor. That's how good the tour was going. We're playing in the back of a tattoo parlor the next day. We were like, hey, went to the drummer, Chris, I think was his name, and said, hey, would you want to finish the tour with us? Or if not, we have to go home. You guys want us to go home or do you want us to finish the tour? And they were like, no. He's like, I can learn them. I've been listening to the songs for like a month with you guys. Like, I know them pretty well. And so he finished the tour with us. He played Furnace Fest, all kinds of stuff with Chris playing drums for us. So Scott left. So that I think it was the touring burned out Scott. He saw it as again, he was a year older than me. He was married at that time. So he was putting a lot of his life on hold.
This was after you were signed to Fearless or before?
Yeah. This was after Somewhere in America. This was after our second album.
Oh, wow. So it's 2001-ish, 2002.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Let's see who else was Adrian. Andrew. Adrian told the story of Andrew leaving the band while we were recording. He basically had told me before we went to record Finders Keepers in California. They flew us out, or we drove out. We didn't fly out. What am I talking about? We drove out to L.A. I wish we would have flown out. We drove all the way out to L.A. and recorded at Paramount Recording Studios on Santa Monica. Before we went to go out there, Andrew had kind of pulled me to the side and was like, hey, man, I just want to let you know, like, I'm like because at that point the touring was starting to kick up. We were starting to do more of it. And he was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I gotta, I'm engaged and I just, this is not the life I want. And I was like, okay, don't say anything. I was like, we haven't recorded this record yet. I want you to record on the album, and I don't want Bob to find it because Bob is already, at that time, Bob was really sketchy on people being in other bands because he was dealing with 30 Foot Fall had just gone through, they were one other band that was on Fearless with us. And their drummer was the drummer from, and I can't remember the name, they were like a one-hit wonder, flash in the pan kind of, I don't remember the name of the band. They were some band that got had one single that kind of got big on MTV or whatever. And he was in that band, and it was causing strife and possibly breaking up 30 Foot Fall and breaking up these other bands. And I was like, so he was super sketchy on any of us being in any other bands. And because he was going through this with other people. And so I told Andrew, I said, don't say anything. If he hears that there's any like if he hears that the band is falling apart or something, or that people are leaving the band and we haven't even put a record out with them yet, he's gonna fucking pull the plug on all this shit. So please don't say anything. So then we were in California recording the album, and Adrian, he doesn't remember this, but Adrian he just dropped the ball and said something in front of Bob about Andrew leaving the band.
Oh no.
And so Andrew, and I think Adrian had pointed out that Andrew didn't even come out with us. So like me and Scott and Adrian drove out to California to record the record. Andrew just flew in and did his guitar parts in like 2 days and then flew back out. Adrian had said something. He just mentioned something in passing about like, when we get home and find a new guitar player and that. And Bob was like, what? And then like I had to like talk Bob down from like canceling the album session and like canceling everything, because he was so freaked out by the idea that he's about to sign a band that literally has people quitting the band in the studio.
So I want to point out one thing, because I just did research as you're talking. It was Damon De La Paz, who was he was a founding member of Phoenix TX and 30 Foot Fall.
TX, that was it. And they were a band. They were out of Houston, and they were like a small band, but they were blowing up at the same time. But because they were blowing up, he had to quit 30 Foot Fall and put 30 Foot Fall in a real bad position. That's what it was. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't realize all this was happening. Okay. Wow.
That's how I understand it, at least. That's kind of how I understood what was going on. I'm only knowing that from what I'm sure what Bob or somebody was telling me at the time. But that was the situation that he was very sketched on. So I'm listening to him complain to me about that in one ear, and then I'm hearing Andrew saying he's leaving the band in the other ear, and I'm like, fuck, everybody just shut up. I just want to record this record, please, guys.
When you guys, so that was Somewhere in America, you guys were recording with him.
No, that would have been the first album. That would have been Finders Keepers.
That was Finders Keepers.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So and you guys recorded that with Jim Cherry.
Jim Goodwin, and Jim Cherry came in to help and brought instrumentation, and Scott Radinsky brought his guitar, and I used his guitar on the record. Adrian used Jim Cherry's bass, I think. He talked about that. Yeah. Jim Goodwin was the guy who produced that. He was the guy who produced like the Face to Face self-titled album, and worked with Voodoo Glow Skulls and a bunch of bands at the time.
So I mean, the thing I'm thinking about is this record comes out in Fearless, which leads to, in my mind, you guys getting on bigger tours because you kind of mentioned that earlier, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then you also mentioned you have stage fright. So does this start working against you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's hard to explain, but it's hard to explain to people. But like, it's the thing you see your dream sitting in front of you, but it's the most scary fucking thing in the world. It was really hard for me to. And I don't want to show anybody or tell anybody. I grew up in a family we don't really talk about your feelings and shit, So it was like at the time, it was like it's just for me. It's just my weight to bear, my cross to bear, So yeah, it became harder for me. But I think the more often I was doing, like I said, at some points we were like 7-8 months on the road. It just became rinse and repeat. So it was like, yeah, I'll be nervous for a while, and everybody knew it. Everybody had the like, hey, it's 30 minutes before the show. Just leave Sean alone. Let him deal with his shit, walk around, pacing the backstage, dicking around with his guitar, trying to sing, warming up, whatever I was doing that day to try to calm myself down. Like, people just leave me alone so I'd get through it. But as I was touring with we started touring with bigger and bigger bands, I started watching how other bands coped with it. Like, there were other bands too, a lot of other guys that I would meet that would also have that kind of pre-show jitters thing. And they'd be like, it's so natural. And I'm like, man, I have a hard time believing the way I feel is the same way you feel, because I feel like I'm going to fucking puke everywhere. Like, I feel like I'm literally like my hands are shaking. My fingers are cold and going numb. I'm so fucking nervous about getting up there just because I don't know how their first reaction is going to be. If we get on stage and we hit the first chord and people are like, fuck you, it's going to be like, well, my night's ruined. I'm literally spending 23 and a half hours a day waiting for 30 minutes to happen.
Well, I was going to say, like, that must have became a little daunting when you mentioned Furnace Fest, or if you have big shows that you're driving to that are, let's say, a week away or 2 weeks away. Like, the anticipation must have been also shitty.
Yeah, that, and then also the anticipation of how are we going to be received.
So that was like a real big thing, though. Like, you were really nervous about like being a part of these bills where you're like, we stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with me. It's not that I didn't need all the adulation and all the congratulations or anything like that for being up there and playing, but I'm an insecure person. There's a reason that people gravitate towards things like punk rock. It's usually because when they were younger, they were not exactly part of the in crowd, You kind of you started off on the outside. And as punk rock became more mainstream, it became cooler for people who didn't grow up like that. Who didn't grow up being the black sheep in their high school or as a kid, it didn't fit in. Now those are the people who are standing out in front of you, judging you for getting on stage. The same people who were judging you when you were younger, the same groups of people.
It's funny you saying that. I love public speaking. I love being in front of a crowd. I love playing shows. Like, I'll get jitters, but then as soon as I get on stage, as soon as I walk on stage, they're gone. But I think I never thought about that because I was also a kid who got like picked on and shit in high school, or just, wasn't in the popular crowd and stuff. But I think one of the reasons why I felt so secure is because I was like, this is my crowd. Like, we all are accepting of each other. So it's funny to me that you put yourself into this punk rock scene and then felt the opposite.
Yeah, I know. And it's probably 100% in my head. There's a lot of it.
100% in your. Oh, it's always that. I mean, even if the one person's looking at you wrong, like, you really have no idea what they're thinking of, but you're like, they fucking hate me. I hate them. Fuck you.
Yeah, it's a level of self-importance, right? It's like a thing we all struggle with every day. Is does everybody else think I'm as important as I think I am? They're all paying attention to me. But when you get on, and that's like a normal anxiety that people have, right? Like, people walk around every day thinking like, oh my God, that person that saw me this morning probably thought I was completely, like, that person didn't give a shit about you. They saw you, you were gone, and then that was the last thing they ever thought about you.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you get on stage, you are the center of attention. You are literally getting on stage going, okay, everybody, pay attention to me now. And so it's almost like you're getting on stage asking for that. And then you have people in the audience that if they don't like you, that's like, well, yeah, 90% of you guys really liked me, but the 10% of you that didn't, I'm really fucking bummed you guys didn't like us. Now, why would – and that's just like this glass half empty kind of attitude. But really, when I was younger, it drove a lot of my decision-making was the fear of not being liked by the crowd that I, like you just said, like the crowd that I inserted myself into. Hey, I thought we were all here to be friends and like each other and support each other's bands. But then there's some percentage of you that doesn't. Why? what the fuck did I do wrong? Why, like, what's wrong with me and what's wrong with you? And then forgetting that it's things like, personal taste and stuff that goes into it. And, kids are very easily influenced by a lot of the kids, these high school kids, stuff like that were watching us. If they see the crowd around them getting into it, they'll get into it. It's that, like, that herd mentality. But if there's a big crowd standing around with their arms crossed just staring at you, well, I'm not going to be the idiot that's going to start dancing or start yelling or clapping or what, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be the standout in that crowd. I felt like that was what was happening when all of the, like, late 90s, and I'm specifically talking about late 90s. By the time the early 2000s happened, it became so much more accepted. It did become a little bit looser, and we were getting on more accurate bills to, like, bands that were more like we were. Because I do think the scene changed from being really open-minded about multi-genre bills to, like, no, I want to see Green Day, Blink-182, The Descendants, and, like, I want to see 4 bands that sound almost exactly alike.
See, when you said that, I was thinking that the early 2000s were going to work against you because that's when everything really starts to flip, take a 180. And I feel like that would have worked against you guys because the sounds that started coming out in 2002, 2003, and so on were just all over the place. And I feel like the sound that you guys had, that's where bands like you started getting lost.
Yeah, well, I think the difference was we became a little bit more aggressive of a band as we got older. The music itself once we got past that Finders Keepers album where I think we kind of hit our maximum saccharine-ness. After that, we started getting a little bit more back of that, like, no, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to write the songs I want to write, and and we'll make them as aggressive as you want to make them, or not aggressive, or whatever. And so the bands that were coming out around that time, I mean, that's when this explosion of bands like Yellow Card and all, a bunch of our friends' bands were getting really big, playing this, like, and we just, like, my reaction to it was to get a little bit more aggressive, to get a little, like, make sure our stage show became, like, it became a goal to get on stage with a band. Like, we went on tour with Mest and Ritalin Kids at one point. My goal, we were opening the show, my goal every night was, I'm going to get on that stage and we are going to blow the fucking bands off the stage. Like, we are going to get up there and play the tightest fucking set. We're going to get up there and play the most in-your-face, aggressive form of what we do, just because I was like, every night, I want people to be like, yeah, Mess was really good. Man, Real Kids were great too, but hey, what the fuck was that first band? Like, who the fuck were they? That became, like, my driving factor. So when we got started, I think maybe it wasn't that the bands, we got on better bills. Maybe it was just our attitude became more of a, like, fuck them. We're going to do what we're going to do. Like, I don't care. Adrian did tell stories about, the band, like, the run-ins with Fearless that we were having at the time too. Fearless was very much trying to they wanted that MTV band. They wanted us to start writing songs that were more like, sound more like this. Can you write songs that are more like Alkaline Trio? Those guys are getting really, hey, you guys should write more songs like Jimmy Eat World. Those guys are like, then go fucking sign Jimmy Eat World, asshole. The fuck do you want from me? I'm not those guys. I didn't live that life. I didn't grow up in that scene. It's not the music. I don't want to play emo music. I don't want to play, like, if I turn my distortion off on my guitar, something's wrong. Something's wrong with my amp, right? Like, I want to be loud, aggressive, in your face. Like, it became more aggressive for me as I got older. And so I think whether or not the music actually was aggressive, my attitude was more aggressive. So I think I coped with it better. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe nothing changed. Maybe actually things got worse.
Was this leading into Somewhere in America when this was happening?
Yeah, kind of leading into that, and then especially between Somewhere in America and the self-titled album, the last album. It is 100%. Like that, I was talking about that Matchbook Romance, Fall Out Boy Mess tour, that one there. That was another one. And Warped Tour. We did the All Warped Tour that same year, 2004. And it was I was so confrontational with the audience. I was so, like, get on stage and just be like, hey, fuck you. What are you going to fucking do about it, kid? Like, it was like, and then we're going to play these these sweet songs about girls stuff, but just kind of like, I just sound so stupid. It's so dumb, but it really was. The guys, Adrian used to say they could tell how much I'd had to drink by the first thing I would say to the audience when I got on stage, because if I got on and was really mousy and was just kind of like, hey, we're Dynamite Boy from Austin, thanks so much, or whatever, when we start playing the first song, he'd be like, oh yeah, Sean's like 100% sober. Like, that's Sean at 100%. If Sean's had like a couple shots of whiskey and then he gets on stage and it's like, hey, what's up, you fucking assholes? Like, yeah, come up here. Yeah, fold your fucking arms, you pussy. It's just like, he'd be like, "Oh God, like what the fuck is gonna happen tonight?" Like,
They're like cheering you guys as you come on. And you're like, what the fuck are you cheering for? They're like, what is this guy's problem?
how dare you like us?
I've never heard this. And anyone, I mean, 'cause there's all these bands from back in the day, and there's some folklore that follows them depending on their personality. I've never heard this about you guys.
Yeah, yeah. It really came out. I think that right, I mean, like the last year and a half before I was finally done. I think I could feel the end nearing for me, and so it did become kind of a. And then I think the other part was Adrian did tell the story of like the shit that Bob put me through with making me feel bad about my weight.
Well, I want to talk about that, like, and get your viewpoint because he brought that up, and I wanted to hear if you wanted to discuss. Because, I mean, like, some people had things happen back in the day, and they're like, it's all smoothed over now, or, I don't know. Like, what was that whole perspective? What was your perspective on all that?
Again, in hindsight, I understand Bob was just trying to run a business, and his goal was not to. One thing to start off us signing to the label and being kind of like a friend deal. Like he's a small label, like it's just a guy who's helping us putting our albums out, helping us go on tour, like stuff like that. To like now he's actually a full-time business. He's got kids. He's got a life. He's trying to he's doing this for a living, right? He's got to make it work, and so he's trying to think of what's the next stage to make these people the most successful. And in his mind or in his view, one of the big things holding us back was our image. And for me, there's almost nothing you could say to me that would piss me off more than to be like, oh, well, your band will never be big because you guys don't look the part. No, because again, I can name you a million bands that don't quote unquote look the part, right? Just because we don't look like the bands that are on MTV. Everybody was being driven so heavily by like MTV and stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were like, oh no, you have to look like those guys. And then at the time, the music was adapting and so was the looks, right? You had like all the emo kids and it's like skinny little kids in skinny jeans. And I was like, look, man, I've never been that. You signed the band. This is what I look like. I still look like this. Like, it's like, what the fuck? What does that matter? Like, I don't understand why that. But like I said, now I understand. It did fuck me up. It hurt my feelings. It made me not trust him. It made me not trust anybody in the music business after that, pretty much. Because I felt like they were all liars. They were all trying to get something. Before that, you're hoping that it's a partnership. It's us together, and man, we're gonna fucking change the world together, whatever. And then at that point, it becomes, oh no, I'm a commodity to you, and I get that, and I get that I am, but like I would never say something like that to somebody. I would never in my life make fun of, or not make fun of, or make someone feel bad about who they were. I thought that's what we were all into punk rock for. I thought that was the reason why we were there, was that like. We'd already gone through that. I'd already went through that shit in high school and, when I was younger. I'd already been through it. So I'm in my, early 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and I've got this guy saying this to me. It's like, who the fuck are you, dude? Are you fucking kidding me? Why don't you get your ass in the back of a fucking van and drive across the country and play shows? And then you tell me what I need to look like or what I need to sound like or what I need to, you know what I mean? Like, it really fucked me up. It led to some really bad feelings between us for a while. And you know what? That's actually not true. It didn't lead to any bad feelings. It led to me feeling like shit for a long time about it. I don't think I took it out on him, or I didn't really bring it up to our relationship as far as like our business relationship or our personal relationship as friends. I just was like, I felt like I just saw someone's true colors, and it was like, oh, okay. So I do have to keep you at arm's length. I can't fucking trust you. You're not a friend. You're literally looking at me as a commodity. So I get our relationship now. You clarified it for me. Thank you.
Was this before Somewhere in America was recorded or after?
It was right before, and then after he really cranked it up. We got into a really big fight after Somewhere in America. I can't remember it. I don't even remember what the reason was, but we were in California at their offices, and the fight was so bad that our roadie was sitting in the van outside, and he could hear me screaming from in the office at him. It almost turned into a fist fight. It was like the compilation of all these things. You guys should be writing music like this. You guys should look like this. And I was just like, why don't you just fucking let us go, man? Why don't you just say, you know what? This is done. We're good. You guys go find a different label. Like, I don't understand why you want to keep us around if all you want to do is change us. Like, what? I don't understand that. And he looked at it as though, no, I'm trying to help you get to the next level. And I was like, well, I don't want that. I don't want to do it on your terms. I want to do if it happens, it's going to happen because we're fucking good. It's not going to happen because I look the part and the music's okay. I don't give a shit about that side of it.
I mean, how do you possibly record that last album with all of this going on?
I was able to put all of my stuff to the side because we knew we wanted to do at least one more record. We had already written the stuff. Danny, the guitar player who had replaced Andrew after Andrew had quit, I had kicked him out of the band. And I am not proud to say, in almost exactly the same fashion, I almost got into a fight with him in Pittsburgh. But it was it sounds like it's such a dick. I was a dick. I mean, to be honest, they were not proud of any of those moments.
I mean, at least, it's like, I think that the one thing about this podcast I love, it's very cathartic when people can look back and be like, this is my true colors. It's like, yeah, be honest, if you're self-reflecting.
Like I said, I was a dick at that point, but I think I was so stressed out that it was like anything I could blame my stress on, other than, hey, you put yourself in this position, Sean. What the fuck are you blaming everybody else for? Anything I could force that onto, I was like, okay, it's their fault. Oh no, I'll get in a fight with him. I just wanted to record that last album. In fact, I got into a fight with Bob after he had sent us the check for the last album, and I was with Matt Riddle from No Use for a Name. He was at my house. They were playing in town. I had taken him out to dinner out at the Salt Lick outside of Austin. Joint. I took him out to Salt Lick for dinner, and he was hanging out with me and my wife at the time. And we were fixing to go to the show. I was ready to take him down to the show. I got into a screaming match on the phone with Bob from Fearless, and we had just gotten the check in the mail that day. And he was like, well, fuck it then. I'm just going to cancel the fucking... And I was like, great. I hung up and we drove straight to the bank and I deposited the check immediately. So he couldn't cancel the check on us.
Oh, shit.
And I mean, Matt was there and Matt heard it and was he was hearing my end of the conversation, of course. And that's why, he had to listen to me bitching about the label all the way back to the office. He was just like, man, he was like, nothing changes. Trust me. He was like, at no level is this any different from anybody else. Same shit we go through, the same shit you're going through. It happens to everybody.
I mean, can I just point out real quickly how surreal it is to me, and I'm guessing it would to you, that you're just in the car with Matt fucking Riddle as this is happening. I mean, the whole time, like, Matt Riddle's in the car with you? I mean, like, that just shows you where you start as a band and you have these dreams, and all of a sudden you're just driving casually with Matt fucking Riddle in your car and, like, screaming at your label. You're like, it's amazing the path that sometimes life can take you, and you're just like, oh.
It's still surreal to me. I'm still good friends with them, and it's still weird to me when we chat or talk or whatever. I first met him when he was in Face to Face. I was working at a club in Austin, and they were on Face to Face was on tour with 10-Foot Pole and somebody else, Snuff maybe, or
Guttermouth.
Maybe Guttermouth. It was one of those bands. Anyway, they were on that tour, and Matt was on stage behind us. But I just loaded him in during security, and we would all used to, back. You remember we used to play the stupid circle game where you put the circle on your body and then slug bug if anybody hits whatever. But we used to do with each other on stage. So we're doing the little circle game, and he was playing behind me and was trying to do the circle game to me and security in the barricade and stuff. And so we became really good. We met that night and became friends. He gave me this face-to-face hat and stuff. I still have it.
Oh, wow.
So this was on tour for the can't remember the name of the Over It, the EP.
Yeah.
They were on tour for that at the time.
Oh, my God.
And so I met him then, and then he remembered me all these years later. When Dynamite Boy we got on our first tour with them. We just did like a little short, like 4-date stint with them. We did a bunch of tours with them, but that was like this little short one that we did. The first time we met him, and he remembered me. He was like, "Did you used to work at a club in Austin?" I was like, "Dude, I can't believe you would remember that." And so we just became, and then when we did the bigger tours with them, me and him and Tony I really jived with him and Tony a lot because they were like my age.
Oh, wait, when you're saying you're touring with him, that's when he was in No Use. That's when because he was at a Face to Face in like 96 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to clarify.
I worked at that show, but we weren't touring together. It was just he came through in Austin. That's how I first met him. But then when I got to tour with him later on when he was in No Use, he remembered me from that Face to Face. But yeah, he was just a nice guy. They were like my same age, so I really got along with him and Tony really well. Became pretty tight with those guys, and it's super weird for me. It is 100% just as fucking weird for me because yes, they are the same bands that when I was first starting, and like when Dynamite Boy first, when I first joined Dynamite Boy in '95, that's what we were listening to. Face to Face, No Use for a Name, the Fat Music for Fat People comps were like constantly on, in the cars and stuff. So it was super weird for me, but I think it was really cool because it really made me feel kind of like at the time, like, hey, I'm part of the club. I finally, and to me, that was success. I had made it. Yeah, I wasn't making $1 million a year or selling fucking hundreds of thousands of albums, but I was friends with these guys. I was shoulder to shoulder with musicians that I listened to and never, and aspired to play like. And then all of a sudden I'm standing next to these guys and we're at sound check playing, Iron Maiden tunes together and stuff. It's like, it's so weird and it's so weird to me, but it's also, it kind of was like, it felt natural at the time. It felt natural. It felt like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, I did my time, right? I did time in prison, so now I get to hang out with these guys.
One question that popped in my head is like, as your songwriting progresses into the last album, did you feel like you were getting stronger at writing songs, or did you start kind of questioning what you were putting out?
I think I got much stronger. At first I think we always felt like we were trying to write to a genre, right? Like when we wrote that second album, I keep going back to that one. It's not a terrible album. It's a lot of people's favorite album, so I don't want to trash it or anything. But that album was written with like a very distinct, like, no, we want to write 2.5-minute songs and they have to have this. And no, Sean, don't be putting guitar solos and everything. Like, I was a fucking guitar noodler, man. I grew up I learned how to play guitar in the late 80s. I was learning to play along with fucking Joe Satriani albums and shit. So, like, I was a noodler. I was a guitar noodler. I wanted to play leads. I always wanted to be Angus Young when I grew up. But I was specifically putting all those things on hold and being like, no, you're not supposed to do that in this kind of music or whatever. And at some point, I think when we did Somewhere in America, I was when we started writing Somewhere in America, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to do what I want to do. I'm just going to write what I want to write. And I like it more when I'm not trying to write to a certain genre, than I'm just writing whatever comes out of my head. Adrian mentioned, I think too, like he grew up listening to all these punk bands, right? He literally grew up listening to, Strung Out. He's playing with literally bands that he grew up listening to. And when we go on tour, I never listened to that. I never listened to punk rock stuff when we were on the road normally. I can't. I'm listening to it all night, every night. I'm listening to 3 other bands. If it's local bands, I'm listening to sometimes like some of the worst versions of some of this music. And I'm playing on stage with some bands that are some of the best versions of this music. Like, why am I going to go sit in the van for 8 hours and a drive the next day and listen to the same shit all day too? So it was like I was listening to a lot of country music and a lot of stuff I grew up on. Country music, old classic rock, singer-songwriter stuff, Tom Waits and Ben Folds and all this kind of like stuff. So I would listen to that, and so I started comparing my songwriting. I just stopped listening to I wasn't listening to Green Day and all these bands. Like, I was listening to that stuff, and so I was just writing, like, I can't write a Ben Folds piano song, but I can write a song on guitar that to me kind of feels like a Ben Folds song or whatever. So that's all I was just thinking of, was how do I keep pushing myself to write better songs? And it was all about the song. And I'll tell you a quick story, just because I use this story even at my job today, because it's pretty telling on how I approach my view on music and my music versus how other people sometimes view their role in music. We were recording Somewhere in America in California with Cameron Webb, Santa Ana, at this little studio in like a industrial park thing. Our guitar player at the time was this guy, Danny. And Danny was a decent guitar player. Like he definitely filled the role. He looked great on stage. He did a great job on stage, right? Like he wasn't like standing in one spot. We were a pretty active band on stage, so we didn't need the person like, a fucking shoegazer standing on stage. It was like, you gotta get into it, man. Be a part of the music, But, he wasn't the tightest guitar player. And he would admit this. I know he would, so I'm not going to think I'm making him feel bad about it. He knows he wasn't the tightest guitar player in the world. I've been playing guitar for a really, really long time. And it was, like I said, it was always my kind of passion when I was younger. It was just, I wanted to be a guitar player. That's all I wanted to be. And so we're in the studio recording the album. Danny's trying to play his parts, and it's not coming out great.
Wait, like, which album is this that you're talking about?
It's Somewhere in America.
Okay.
I think it's the only album he recorded on. Every album has a different lineup. So
and then Sean fired him.
And then Sean fired him. No, that should be the end of every. You can just put that. Just take that. I'll just say that. You can just edit that in after everything. And then Sean fired him. By the way, when we were going to record Somewhere in America, that was when we had first met No Use for a Name. Those 4 shows we played with No Use were the 4 shows leading to us getting to California. We picked up those shows because we were driving up to California anyway. And then we got offered these 4 shows opening up for No Use, starting in Denver. And we were like, sure. So we got to hang out with these guys for the 4 days before we went to record our album, which was, by the way, very inspirational. They were super nice guys, and it was a big deal to us. And so it was awesome getting to play with them and then go record our album. We were in the studio, and Danny's having a hard time. It's just not clicking. It's like he's supposed to be the rhythm guitar player, and the rhythm's just not locked in. And I'm sure he's been playing these songs just like everybody else live for all this time, and it sounded fine live. But when when you're in the studio, there's no faking it. Like you either play the part or you can't play the part. Like it becomes really obvious when someone's out of time in the studio. And live, everybody's out of time. The drummer's race to the end of the song. Everybody's speeding up, slowing down. Like it's all. But when you're in the studio, you can't do that. It just doesn't feel right. So eventually, the producer Cameron was like, Sean, you want to give a pass? I was like, here, give me the guitar. Let me try it. So I just end up recording a bunch of the guitar parts instead. So we leave there, and Danny's real quiet. We're going back to the house we're staying at, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, man? And he was like, what the fuck, man? I'm not even going to play on this album. Like, you're a better guitar player than me. Like, how am I going to ever fucking play on I'm never going to play on any of our records. You're just going to record all the guitar stuff. And I was like, well, first off, like, that's exactly the attitude that's put you in the position that you're in right now. What you just said, you're a better guitar player than I'll ever be. Well, then a self-fulfilling prophecy. You just fucking said that. But why would you even think that? And he said, well, you're just going to do all the stuff yourself, and you're going to record all the vocals. Like what the hell am I even here for? I should just go home. And I was like, well, if you want to go home, you can go home. I don't think that's the case. I still want you on the record. And I was like, but let me tell you something. It's about the song. You're making this about you. I don't give a fuck who plays on what. That doesn't matter to me. Adrian sang and played. Actually, Adrian played a couple guitar tracks and a couple things on that album because I couldn't pull them off the day that we needed to do it. We were, time is money. This is not a studio. We're not in the studio for 7 months recording an album. You got 2 fucking weeks to record everything and probably mix it too, more than likely. Time is money. Like we're sleeping in the studio. We can't afford a hotel. We're literally they lock us in every night and we sleep in the fucking drum room. And then they come wake us up in the morning at 9 a.m. We go wash ourselves up in the bathroom, take a horse bath, and then come out and start recording. And so, I'm like, we're living the dream, man. I was like,
this is everything we want, man.
And I was like, when the album comes out, Danny, it's not going to say, Sean played guitar on this, and this. Danny only sang on this. And Adrian played guitar and drums and bass on this, and this. And Scott played, it's going to say, Sean guitar, Danny guitar, Adrian bass, Scott drums. That's what the album's going to say. I was like, if you want to be a better guitar player, then fucking practice. Go do something. I was like, dude, we just got off tour with No Use for a Name. I watched Dave play guitar every night, Dave Nassy, and I was like, dude, that guy fucking destroys me. You seen him play guitar? I was like, every night, all I could think of is, God damn it, I am going to play guitar like that someday. I am going to keep practicing because that is inspiring to me. I was like, instead of being inspiring, you're letting this whole thing like shit all over you because your ego's damaged because you can't play the part. Hey, it's not my fault you can't play the fucking part. Don't blame me because I can and you can't. Like, that's bullshit. That's not on me. Yeah, should I just bend over and go, all right, well, it's not going to be as good. The song won't be as good, but I want Danny to feel like his ego is stroked to play on the album. I was like, man, it's not about that. I don't care. Again, I don't care about that. That's not my job is to make your ego feel great about what you did in the studio. Like, you want to be a better guitar player, be a better guitar player. So I always tell, and the reason I like to bring it up is because at work, it's a thing where, same thing you run into people who are just like very, this kind of negative, kind of down, like, I can't do this as good as you. Well, okay, well then learn how to do it better. How do you think when I was 13, I didn't pick up the guitar and start playing fucking Metallica solos. Like, it took years of me playing guitar to even come close to even think about trying to play a guitar solo. I was like, if you don't think you're good enough or you can see in the studio that there's a failing, then fix it, man. Like, fix it yourself. Don't put that on me.
How long after you guys recorded that album, did you kick him out?
Uh,
Because it's coming.
probably about after the album came out, it would have been on tour for that album. So, but it would have been, probably it was probably 6 months before the album came out. It was probably about a year afterwards, maybe.
I mean, because we're talking about like progressing in your songwriting and all that, so it sounds like, I mean, either way, you were on this mission where we'll do this, and I'm gonna bring the team along, and I'm gonna kick you out if you're not holding your weight. So I think it's same with like the songwriting too. If you're like, if I can't have someone that's what's the word, like supporting what I'm doing, or I'm feeding off of them, they're feeding off of me, like then that's gonna affect the song. So peace.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. And also, to be clear, there was never like an unwritten rule that was always my songs. I mean, eventually Adrian started bringing songs to the band. He started feeling comfortable enough to bring songs to the band, and we played his songs too. And I had no problem sharing the songwriting, but I probably wasn't super open to it. I mean, I wasn't like opening the door and being like, "Hey, does anybody have anything to play today?" It was usually like, "Here's the 5 things that I wrote over the weekend. What do you guys want to? Let's work on these." But I think Danny had that kind of like I think he felt like he needed me to help carry him along a little bit further, and I just wasn't. It just was not my thing. And the reason that I kicked him out of the band was that it became a much more personal issue when we kicked him out of the band. It was more of a personality clash that just came out over time. We didn't enjoy being around each other anymore, and it just. The guitar playing was just and he's also not a great. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to put up with a shitty personality when he's not even the best guitar player. So it was kind of more of like I would keep him around if we got along great, and he's filling the spot fine on stage. Like we're pulling the songs off, but the mixture of like, well, we don't get along personally, and you're not that great of a guitar player. I was like, I don't have any place for you in this, man. Sorry.
Have you like the years that went on after you guys broke up, and when I'm not like just ending it there, but have you like talked to like past members and like been cool with them, or there's some that you just like haven't spoken to since they like left the band?
Let's see. So like, as far as people who left the band, well, like Andrew. So I'll start with Andrew. When Andrew left the band, no, I'm sorry. I'll start with Matt. Because John leaving the band wasn't even really a thing. When that first guy, John, was like in the band for like 6 months, and then he had already decided he was out, I think, before I'd even joined the band. So, but Matt left the band, and Matt and I didn't get along very well. Just our personalities clashed. So when he left the band, he left of his own volition. I didn't kick him out. It was before I was my empirical overlord of the band did not take place yet. So he left of his own volition, which was fine with me. And then Andrew leaving the band of his own. He and I have talked. Matt and I have talked over the years a little bit, just kind of like, hey, on Facebook kind of thing. Andrew and I have stayed in touch. Yeah, he and I are still good friends. I mean, like, I live far away, and I live up in Seattle. So, and I've lived here since 2009. So, my interactions with people that don't live in Seattle are pretty rare anymore, anyway. But we're still friends. I would still consider us all friends. Scott and I did eventually just become friends, like virtually again over like Facebook and stuff like that, occasional conversations and stuff, but never anything deep. I don't think we never like hung out again or anything. I felt pretty betrayed him leaving us on tour. I couldn't even make it to the end of the tour. Like I felt pretty betrayed by that, even though it was my fault. Like, I wanted to fight the guy, so I'm okay with that hypocrisy. Let's see. And then Danny leaving the band, yes. After about a year or so, he and I became kind of friends again. He kind of saw that the end was already there. We just hadn't kind of admitted it to ourselves. And it just led to the almost getting into an argument, almost into a fight, was just the kind of pinnacle of that. But he and I have talked since then, are friends still. Let's see, then who else left? Scott, Danny, Adrian. That's about it. Yeah. I mean, in general, yes. Everybody, I would still consider friends. Whether we stay in touch or not is a totally different thing. Like, I haven't really talked to any of the guys in a long time. Adrian, all of them. Talked to him once or twice during the pandemic. I think there was some talk about possibly doing a show right when the pandemic was starting, doing a reunion show or something. And I think that ship has sailed at this point. I don't really want to do it anymore.
You mentioned all these members, and I'm on your Wikipedia this whole time and have that up in Discogs, and none of their names except for Andrew are in past members.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably because on the recording. So the lineup on the recordings would have been like on the albums would have been, Hell's Other People would have been Matt, Andrew, Scott, and me, and then on Somewhere in America it would have been Adrian, Danny, Scott, and me, and then the self-titled album was Sam, Dusty, Adrian, and me.
Yeah, that's the last ones that says members, and then past is Andrew, and that's it. And it's funny because it says Andrew Leeper, and you click on it, and it goes to a page that has absolutely no information. I'm like, why is this going anywhere? Like, what is it taking me?
And he went on. He still plays in bands in Austin. He didn't stop playing music or anything. He wanted to be a local guy. He didn't really want to tour. So touring was not his bag. So he stayed in playing music and bands, stuff like that for a long time. Matt had left the band to go play for Blunt in Florida, and then he moved out to California. And then he stopped playing music altogether and became like a chef or something. And then the other guys, Dusty, Scott, Adrian, all of them, they've all been in and out of bands in Austin ever since then. I don't think any of them have gone on tour. Sam is the only one who has gone on to play, I think, in a lot of different bands. He's an amazing fucking drummer. Was always wanted by a lot of bands. And so I think he keeps himself working. I'm not sure if he does it like full time. I know he does photography and stuff too. But yeah, I mean, I would still consider them all friends, but whether we stay in touch and stuff is a completely different.
So Adrian said, I believe he had said that you were married at the time and you wanted to start having kids, and that would like help.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what leads to like the like you going fuck this?
Yeah. And it's so weird because there's a self like a self-destructive part of me as well that also wants to blow things up when they're at their best. I actually got engaged in 98 or 99. Interestingly enough, got engaged with Bigwig and Bickley. No, Bigwig and Beefcake and Lucky Strike all staying at my house with me and my fiance. We were on a big tour together, big Fearless tour together, and we got engaged. Bigwig and all of them were there. They all helped. We all had a big engagement party that was basically all the bands in my backyard barbecuing. And then we got married in 2003. So at some point around 2000, it was somewhere between Somewhere in America and the self-titled album, when we were going through a lot of when all the stuff had happened with Bob and everything, and I could kind of see that if we didn't get another label that was going to take us on, that I kind of felt like, I think this is probably it. But then everything started getting better. Like things started spinning. We started getting really good tours, and we started getting on bigger. We actually got a real manager, like somebody who was like in the industry and was managing like the Ataris and all these other bands that was like well known. And then we got the agency group picked us up. And so now we had really good bookers before that, but now we had like the booking agency, right? Like there is that was booking every. So we started getting all these really good things. And I was like, at that time, so this would have been like, 2003, 2004. So I would have been 31, 32. And I was just like, this is fucking exhausting, man. This is exhausting. Like I've been doing it for almost 10 years at that point with Dynamite Boy. I'd been doing it for a few years before that with the other bands, but I was just exhausted. I was tired, and I was like, I'm not going to have kids and leave them and go on tour. It's not I can't do that. It's not like I want to be a dad, and I'm not going to be an absent dad. And so I just started kind of having these feelings that I didn't see it getting any bigger, and things were getting better, but I wasn't seeing it as being better anymore. Now it was just like what I was saying earlier, you do the 23 and a half hours a day to wait for that 30 minutes. It was getting to the point where that 30 minutes wasn't as enjoyable as it used to be. But the whole time, all I was thinking about was, are we going to make enough money to pay our rents this month? Are we going to make enough? How long are we going to have to work for when I get home before the next job? Jumping from shit job to shit job because that's all I can keep at the time. I was just exhausted. And then I finally had made the decision. We got those huge couple big back-to-back tours. We did the Mess Fall Out Boy Matchbook Romance tour, and then we did Warped Tour, and then in the middle of Warped Tour we did like a Queers tour in the middle of it. It was all of this shit happening at once, and I was just like, that's it. I'm done. Like, I'm exhausted. I can't do this. And all I want is to have kids. I got married in 2003. So now I had a wife. It's literally the only thing I was waiting on was to have kids. And it was like, if I'm going to do it, now's the time to do it. And so the band was kind of probably at its peak. And I was like, what a great place to stop. Instead of fucking beating this is probably as big as it's ever going to get. Like, if it was going to get bigger, I feel like it would have exploded on Warped Tour. It would have exploded. And I just kind of was like, at some point you have to look in the mirror and go, this is it. This is as good as this is as big as the band's going to get. We've had opportunities. We've done a billion things we never got the chance. We never thought we'd ever get the chance to do. Let's go out on top. Let's not wait until the crowd declines down to 5 people again. Let's just go out on top, or as close to the top as we're ever going to get. And so I just started putting in, like, I talked to the guys one day. I started setting up, like, I'm going to get a decent job now. So I started talking to my friends about places I could work when the band was over, and that conversation had begun. And so in my head, it was like, okay, well, now I've hit the timer and just said, okay, how much time is left? I decided in 2004 that I was done.
Was there any, like, because at that time too, did the scene changing, did that dishearten you at all, or were you just looking at your the band, and was there an influence of that on your decision?
I think so, because I think I'd seen enough of our fellow bands get big at the same time, and it was like, okay, so like, you're standing in a field, you're a flower in a field, and all of a sudden, like, we're all pretty, but only 4 of us got picked. The rest of us are just sitting in the field waiting to die now. And I was like, that's kind of how I felt a little bit, if that makes sense. It was like,
that's a good analogy.
It was like,
pretty.
It was like, we're all just as good as each other, but the ones that are going to get the opportunity to go to the next level, it's happened. Like, we got our opportunities. Our opportunities led to 4 full-length albums, 2 7-inches, a split EP, and an album of B-sides. I mean, that's fucking phenomenal. I can name huge acts that never even did that much. So I was like, I had nothing to be discouraged about or not proud of. The scene changing around us was not really, I wouldn't say the scene changing made me think that we weren't part of it anymore. It was more like, well, the ones out of us that were going to get picked and we're not going to evolve much more than what we are now. I think maybe that was it too. The scene was changing, but I just saw it like, okay, we're done evolving. Like, my songwriting in this genre, I don't think we're going to evolve much more. We're going to keep writing songs that are going to be like this, and that's cool, and people seem to like it. But if we're not going to evolve, then let's not wait to be killed off. Let's end it now. When
you were done, did you go through any kind of personal? I asked this a bunch of people lately, like any kind of identity crisis at all?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, man, I'm trying to think of the moment for me that it became very real was when I had to sell the van. After the band was broken up, it had been months, and I decided to sell the van and split the money. And I was like, okay, well, that really was the kind of punctuation point, because the van was kind of our home. The couple vans that we had over the years were our home for many, many months out of the year. So when I got rid of that, it was like selling the family, the family farm. It was like, man, like, that's it. And for me, it was not the identity crisis, because I always had a real rough time with, like, being recognized and stuff like that. Like, I have a real hard time with that. Like, it's very, I get very embarrassed and nervous around it. Like, I remember walking into like a store and hearing our song playing, like going into a Hot Topic in fucking New York or something. And then, like, our song is playing, like, over at some compilation or something. And somebody like, oh my God, it's us. And I'm like, shut the fuck up. Are you kidding me right now? I don't want anyone in here to know that's us. It's so embarrassing to me. Like, I don't want to be recognized. I don't want someone to come over and be like, oh my God, I love you guys. Or just at that point, I was so embarrassed by it. So I think my identity crisis was more around not feeling important anymore. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do. Right. Like, I had a chance at my dream. You see your dream. So many people go through the life and don't even know what they want to be. Right. They never even figure out what their dreams were. I knew what my dreams were pretty young. I was with a bunch of guys who had the same dream. We made our shot. We took our shot. We got as far as we could get. But in the end, we didn't get the final goal, which was do this for a living for the rest of our lives. That was the final goal. It was never to be like big on MTV or sell a million records or whatever. It was always just be like, I just want to do this for a living. I just want to not have to come home and worry about money or not worry about where my rent's going to come from. Or come home and go work at a shit job. I just love to come home and write music and then go back on the road when it's time and then go record when it's time, then write more music and then go back on the road when it's time. I was cool with that. I didn't feel like I wasn't feel important anymore. Like I said, the 30 minutes every day was no longer fun. It was me thinking about all the work we had to do as a business now. And so it was hard for me to think of like, what am I going to write songs about? Like, I'm going to write songs about how hard it is to get your record label to not tell you to lose weight. Like, I don't know what to think about. Like, that's the reality of my life now. My life is the band. I don't want to sing about just being in a band. Like when I was writing songs about like living normal life, it seemed like that connected. This isn't going to connect with anybody. So identity crisis wise, I went through I feel important anymore to people. I was so burned out that it took me a while to feel that. I think I was so exhausted from everything that it was more of a relief that I didn't feel like I had to take care. And I never, by the way, these guys never made me feel that way, but like I said before, I felt like I kind of had to take care of Dusty and Sam and Adrian. I was trying to help them realize their goals. And I realized I no longer was focusing on my goals. So it was like, all right, well, that's not my job, is to make their lives better.
I think at the end of Adrian's, I think he said he was like, I didn't want to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was like, fuck, man. He's like, I would still do it. I think he said that.
When I approached him about it, when I quit the band, and I kind of came to them and told them, hey guys, it was after Warped Tour, before we were going to go on, we had a tour coming up with Lucky Boys Confusion, like a month-long tour with them. And I had decided that was my last tour. And so I had a meeting with them, like kind of a band meeting. And I had already kind of talked to the agency group and kind of put the kibosh and booking anything else right now, just to take a little break or whatever. And so I talked to the guys and I said, hey, listen, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I want to book some final shows, do this tour, do that kind of stuff. But I'm tired. I can't do this. I want to have a kid. I think this is the thing that triggered me. That I was like, I really wanted to talk because I heard Adrian's stuff. And, Adrian's never opened up to me very much about all of how he felt about all that stuff too. I think he was protective of my feelings, trying to make sure he supported me as a friend and stuff. But I told him at the time, I said, you guys can continue on if you want. Like, I'm not saying the band is over. I'm saying Sean Neal is done.
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, you could say that all you want to. It's not the same band. You got a new singer 4 albums into it, unless you're like Genesis and you get Phil Collins, and that's when their career really starts.
Yeah, we really were like Genesis. And I understand. In hindsight, of course, I understand.
I'm not like taking a jab at you or anything like
That's
that.
a ridiculous statement to make. I'm sure that's exactly what they thought. There's no way we could do this band without you. You're the singer. You're the songwriter. But I was like, well, yeah, but I don't want to feel self-important and be like, I'm done, gentlemen. Have a good life. I will stroll off into the sunset and take my band with me. I was like, it's our band. It belongs to all of us. So I was like, if you guys want to keep going, like, Adrian, you're a good singer. You could fucking pick up the reins. There's 2 shows where he had to sing on tour because I'd lost my voice, and he had to sing the whole show. He hated it, but we made him do it. On Warped Tour was one of them, actually. Yeah, and so I gave him that option. Of course, I understand that they didn't take it. But I didn't want to make them feel like I was saying, hey, your lives are also going into stasis now too. Like, if you want to keep doing this, you guys can. You will not offend me. It wouldn't hurt my feelings. If you want me to still help write stuff, I would do it. I just can't do the playing the shows and touring and the business stuff anymore. I can't do it. It's killing my fucking soul. It's killing my love of music. It became a business, which is what we wanted it to be. But then once I got the business, I was like, oh, wait, no, hold on. I liked it better when it was just a bunch of fun. I really liked that the most.
So to kind of lead this down the path to start wrapping up, because I got to bounce soon. So this is the question I've started asking recently before the last 2. Is there a story that you've always wanted to tell that you've never told in an interview before that you can tell now?
Let's see. There was an incredibly insane set of circumstances in Florida that was probably the worst tour experience that we've ever had, and I've never heard another band outside of being in a terrible wreck, which is part of our story. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say anything like as the circumstances were so like unrolled in such a bad way that we were on tour with Cruiserweight, our friends Cruiserweight from Austin, and another band from Florida, what is escaping me, Glass something? No, not
Glass Eater?
Maybe Glass Eater from Florida?
I think that was. I just remember that's the only other. It was Glassjaw and then Glass Eater. That's all I can remember.
Glass Eater might be the band. I might be who I'm thinking of. Anyway, I feel so bad. I hate not remembering stuff like that because it makes them feel like they were insignificant to me or something. It's absolutely not the case. But
disclaimer: Sean's old.
Sean's old. Yeah, come on, guys. I'm 50. What do you want me to remember? So we were on tour with them, Cruiserweight and us. So the whole thing started. It was kind of the end of the tour. There was an Orlando, and then Jacksonville, and then we came home. And so on the way to the Orlando show, we were staying with our friend Jen in Orlando, who we always stayed with. And us and Cruiserweight were leaving. Cruiserweight was driving behind us. We were on this big, and I can't think of the highway. There's the highway that goes, like, if you're going from Orlando to Jacksonville, you cross this big bridge that, as you're leaving Orlando. And as we crested the top of the bridge, traffic was stopped. We went from like 60 miles an hour to like stopped in 100 feet. And so we slammed on our brakes. Cruiserweight was behind us. They slammed on their brakes, but they slammed into the back of our trailer. And then behind that, a giant wreck takes place. A semi goes sideways. There's a bunch of motorcycles that are involved in it. Real bad shit that happens behind us. We hobble off of the highway and get down to the bottom off of the bridge. The bridge is now stopped because all the traffic behind us has stopped due to the big wreck behind us. And we get off to the side of the road. We get out and look, and basically on our trailer, the back door of the trailer, you remember on those old like a 5x8 trailer we had. They have the bar that you lock it with, the big handle thing that you spin. That bar is bent inwards, and you can't open it yet. And then we go around to where the hitch is, and the ball on the hitch has been bent upwards at a 90-degree angle, so it's facing the van. And the trailer hitch is just kind of sitting on top of it, and the chains are the only thing really holding it on. It's not sitting on the ball anymore because the ball is facing the van. So we're like, okay, what do we do? So we take the chain and we tighten it up so that it'll hopefully hold the trailer on. Cruiserweight calls their insurance company or whatever to get all that shit taken care of. We drive to the nearest town. Now, we're still thinking we got to be in Jacksonville to play this show in like 3 hours. So we hobble to the next town, whatever that is. It's like 15 miles away. And we get there, and I'm like, okay, let's get to a U-Haul. We need to get a new trailer hitch. So we go get a new trailer hitch from U-Haul. We go buy one. And we get, what was the other thing we need to do? We had to get something else while we were there. Can't remember. But we got the trailer hitch thing, and then we're like, okay, but we can't get the trailer hitch ball out of the back of the van. It's like when it got bent, it pancaked inside the sleeve, It won't pull out. So we go to a Home Depot that's like a mile from there, and I go inside and buy like 10 feet of chain. And I come out and I go to a light post outside, and I tie the chain around the cement bottom of the light post, and we take the trailer off, and I tie the back of the ball hitch to the other end of the chain, and then I get in the van, and I back up to where there's all the slack, and then I just take off in the van, and I rip it out of the back of the fucking the sleeve. We get the new trailer hitch, we put it on, we lock it in, we put the trailer hitch on, we're on the way. No problem, we're going to finish this tour. We get to Jacksonville, play the show, we play at Jackrabbits. Is that what it's called? Jackrabbits?
I have no idea.
Fuck, I can't remember. Anyway, we play. I think there's a place called Jackrabbits, and we go to play in Jacksonville, play the show. Show goes great.
Jackrabbit's the name of it.
Yeah, it is Jackrabbits. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Man, pretty good. My memory's not that shabby.
Not bad.
So Glass Eater takes off. They're from Florida. They're home. They're going to take off back down to Miami or wherever they're from. Cruiserweight and us are like, all right, cool. Let's show's over, guys. All right, let's caravan back to Austin. We drive like 3 blocks. Oh, I'm sorry. How did we get the trailer open to get our gear out? Oh, well, I had to buy a crowbar when we were at Home Depot as well. I had to basically beat the piss out of the back because the lock was all fucked up. Everything was all fucked up in the back. But I was able to pry the door open, and then we went and bought just straps, the ratchet straps. So we knew when the night was over, we were going to have to ratchet strap the trailer shut to drive home. This is fucking ridiculous. We should have just given up and flown home is what we should have done. Because this isn't even the bad part. This is the setup for what happens.
These are the signs leading up to whatever you're going to say.
This was you motherfuckers need to pay attention. The world is telling you something right now. So we drive 3 blocks from Jackrabbits, and all of a sudden our van breaks down. The engine breaks down. Starts making weird fucking noises, big knocking noises. And we pull over and stop, and the van won't start. We're like, all right, well, that's not good. So here we've got a trailer that's ratchet strapped closed on the back of this van that won't start. Cruiserweight is like, we're all hungry. They're like, well, we're going to run over to Crystal Burger and grab some crystals. We'll bring them back. And we'll stay here. And you call a tow truck or something. We're like, all right.
Wait, Crystal Burgers and bring crystals back?
Yeah. I know if you went down, Crystal Burger was like White Castle.
Oh, someone just talked about this. Okay, I didn't know they called them crystals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just remember sitting on there's a visceral memory of sitting on the trailer hitch eating Crystal Burgers, just thinking to myself, what the fuck am I doing here? What am I doing right now? It's 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning. I'm eating Crystal Burgers on a broke down van with a smashed trailer after getting into an accident 3 hours ago. What the fuck am I doing right now? And so we call a tow truck. Tow truck comes and says they can tow us, but they can't tow the trailer. So Cruiserweight says, okay, we're going to go drop our trailer and we'll come back and get the trailer from here. You guys can get the van towed to a place. We're like, all right, that sounds like a great idea. So the tow truck driver comes, picks up the van, goes and drops it off at some place in the town that we're in. Cruiserweight drops their trailer, picks up our trailer, and then takes it to a hotel. We have to go find a hotel to stay at near the hotel, but the trailer doesn't have a lock on it. It has all of our gear in it. And so we back the trailer in a parking lot right next to where we're at. We back the trailer up, and we have one of those hitch locks, remember those things that you could put up inside your trailer hitch that locked shut, like a master lock that you could keep people from stealing your trailer. They can't put it over the car hitch. We put that on because we had one of those, and we back it up against the building so you can't get into the back of the trailer. Now, in hindsight, totally stupid because we've actually, as a group, the 4 of us have picked the trailer up and pulled it along when we needed to move it. So it totally could have been easily gotten into and all of our gear got stolen. But that didn't happen, luckily. Cruiserweight has to get back to Texas. So they drop the trailer. They drop us at the hotel. We know where the van is. It's a couple blocks from where we're at. So they're like, hey, we got to head out. So they take off and head back to Texas. We wake up the next morning. We're like, all right, guys, it's crazy, but it's, it'll all happen. We'll get the van fixed. We go next door and we talk to the guys about the van, and they're working on it. It like the serpentine belt or something had broken on it or something. So they're going to replace it, get it fixed, get us up and running again. Great. We go back to the hotel, check out of the hotel. We're standing outside the hotel waiting for a cab to come get us. And we see a tow truck drive by, and our trailer is on the back of the tow truck. Just drives right by. We're like, what the fuck? Was that our fucking trailer? I mean, it's obviously our trailer. It's ratchet strapped closed, and the back door is smashing. That is absolutely our trailer.
It just says Dynamite Boy right across it.
Yeah, literally. Right? And we're just like, are you fucking kidding me? So now we're getting the van fixed, and now we're gonna have to go find our fucking trailer and get our trailer at a tow yard. So then we go get the van. We pay some ridiculous amount of money for getting the van fixed. And then we're calling around we have to go back to the parking lot where we dropped the trailer to call the number to figure out where our trailer got towed to. We go there and we go to get our trailer, and Danny almost gets into a fist fight with the fucking guy at the tow yard. So now the guy at the tow yard doesn't even want to give us our trailer back. Now I'm having to threaten the fucking guy that I'm gonna fucking kill him if he doesn't give us our trailer and shit. It was, and so like 4 p.m. the next day, we finally get our trailer. We tie it to the fucking van. We have it all on the hitch, but we have to tie all the chains up because the trailer is wobbly, it's ready to fall apart. We take off. We get down the road. We get I don't know, 20, 30 miles outside of Jacksonville, and we blow both the tires on the trailer. And of course, we don't have spares for the trailer tires. So we end up having to get a hold of, and we don't have AAA. By the way, how the fuck did we tour and didn't have AAA the whole time? What a stupid idea that was. And so then we have to call another tow company to go tow the trailer somewhere so we can get the tires replaced, because they're like gone. They're like, blown out to where they're just like shredded. It's just like, just the tread is just sitting on like the wheel well. And then finally got the trailer fixed. And then by like 10 o'clock that night, we were back on the road heading back to Austin, like 2 days after we were supposed to actually leave or something. It was fucking insanity. Everything that could go wrong. And somehow we were in the most like chipper mood. We were just like, oh, that's another thing. Oh, there goes something else. Oh, there goes our trailer. Oh, there's our van. Oh, we blew the tires in the trailer. It's like, what the fuck? Like, who even like continues to go out after that? Who's like, we should keep going on tour now. That was a lot of fun.
You guys definitely had fucking gumption, I guess, or
Yeah.
what would be the word that just pushed through all these negative things?
Yeah, we were, or just dumb.
Or just dumb.
Fucking dumb. Just dumb.
All right, dude. Well, I'm gonna have to wrap this up again for timing. This has been great too, by the way. I'm really glad you reached out
Yeah,
because
thank you so much.
yeah, it was awesome.
It was really cool listening to Adrian's, and I've gone and listened to a bunch of other ones of folks that I know on there too, and it's kind of cool because I don't get a chance to reminisce about it at all, because in 2009 I moved to Seattle, right? So I have no. I mean, I've done my own music since I've been here, but like it's been like my own personal stuff. It's nothing that I'm not playing in a band or anything anymore here or anything.
Yeah, you should check out the Tom Bigwig interview. I think it was like number 7, and I believe we talk about you guys.
I need to go back. I would love to go back and listen to that one. That's definitely one I need to listen to. But yeah, it's just since I've come here, it's hard for me because it's a decade. It's another life. It's another lifetime. And I was a loader on a tank in Desert Storm before that. I've lived multiple lives now.
Holy shit! Wow.
I have different worlds that I've lived in, and so it's fun to kind of go back and talk about the band stuff because it was a huge part of my. I mean, it was from when I was early 20s to early 30s. So it was a huge part of my life. So really cool.
Yeah, man. All right, cool. Well, 2 things before we wrap it up. Before the last question, what would you like to plug? It could be about you. It could be about a friend. It could be about both.
Oh, I don't know. I still write music. I go to Bandcamp and look up Sean Neal. I did an acoustic album that I kickstarted myself a couple years ago and recorded all myself. It's very, very singer-songwritery kind of stuff. It's not at all like what like Dynamite Boy. More like the stuff I listened to when I was in Dynamite Boy. Yeah, that, and go search the other guys out and listen to their bands. They're all fucking incredible musicians. I miss those guys. Go support their bands. That's about it. I don't do music anymore for like myself. I don't do any music for anybody else. I just do it for myself. I did that Kickstarter and I've never sold the album, right? Like I've got a stack of them in my room. I'll send you one. I just give them to people. I didn't do it because I wanted to sell it or make another business run at it. Like I just did it because I was like, hey, I want to see if I can record my own album and put a vinyl out. I did. So
that's awesome. Yeah, getting a record on vinyl is like the pinnacle for me personally. Like it's the coolest thing. You're like, oh my god, this is on vinyl right now. This is great. This is amazing.
There are no, other than our 7 inches. There was no Dynamite Boy albums that were ever released on vinyl because at the time 95 to 2005, vinyl wasn't really a big resurgence of people listening to records on vinyl. I did,
yeah,
but it became really hard. It became all CDs. People stopped making vinyl after a while.
Yeah, and now I just spent like $6,000 in the last 2 years, like building my collection from scratch. Like literally.
Yeah, this is like my 3rd collection I've built up over the years, and that's about where I'm at too. It's like
it's fucking addictive, man. It
really is.
So addictive.
I go down the path of going back trying to find, and I don't care about like original releases or things like that. I'm not that touchy. I collect toys too, so that's where I put most of my collection time into. But my vinyl collection is like, I go back and be like, man, I want to go back and hear this band. And it's like, I don't want to hear him on CD. I want to be like when I was listening to Propagandi's first album. I only listened to it on vinyl ever. Vinyl and cassette. That was it. And so I'll go out and find Propagandi's album. It might be the new version of it or whatever, but occasionally you'll get these things that you can't find. You have to go pay stupid fucking prices.
Yeah, there's a record store like 3 blocks from where I live. There's one down the street that has beer on tap, so you can drink a beer and then look through vinyl. That makes you really buy more. Yeah, it's great. But the one down the street, Starry State Records, it's just records, and they have how to clean everything like in there. And I was gonna buy it the other day. I was like, I already have a stack of like 5 records. I'm not sure if I want to get something. I'm like, fuck, I should go back and like look that one up. Cool, man. All right, so last question: what scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
All of the the do-it-yourself. Don't grassroots, do-it-yourself. I mean, regardless of where we got as a band, at no point in time did anybody take over things for us, right? Other than like, oh, hey, Sean doesn't have to book anymore because we got a booking agency. But I was still talking to the booking agency, coming up with ideas, doing all that. So to this day, like I said, I'm a producer at a board game company. And as a producer, prior to this, I was a producer at video game companies for years and stuff. It's always been I don't count on waiting for somebody to get something done. It's like, fuck it. If I can't find somebody to do it, and I'll just do it myself. Like, that was everything, right? Like, even doing music, it really bums me out that like the world of like hanging out at Kinko's at 2 a.m. and running off flyers to go hand out at shows became just post your MySpace event or just post your Facebook event. That's all you have to do to promote your shows. It really bummed me out because that was such a huge part of the camaraderie was in the like, how are we going to get this thing done? We aren't a major label band, but fuck it, we're putting a record out. How are we putting a record out, guys? Let's just figure out how to do it. I miss that. I miss the like, or not miss it, but that's the thing that I think I hold on to still, that I don't let anybody say, oh no, we don't do that here. Like, well, no, we can. We may not want to, but we totally can. I guarantee we can do whatever we want. Given enough time and resources, we can do whatever we wanted to. So if you guys are willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears, like people still, in my band, I work, I was telling you earlier, I work on a game for Marvel called Marvel Battle World for Funko. And it's really funny because our studio, it's a very creative place. And so it's really all about doing shit like that. It's really all about working on this Marvel game. Is like, I just tell people like, hey, we don't have to wait for anything. Like, we just can fucking do the thing. Let's make this and show it to them. If they don't like it, we'll make it again. Like, who cares? Like, I just put that in everything I do. Like, I just never wanted to, I never cared about making the perfect version of something. I was always cool with making my version of what that was. So I think that's the thing I clung on to the most. The thing I miss the most would be the camaraderie and the friendships and the like, we're all in it together kind of idea. That's the thing that I miss sometimes, because I think we don't live in a world today where that's really the thing that we try to talk people into. It's more like, no, we can all, it's okay to give up on things. Like, man, I really don't always give up on things. Like, sometimes you can just do it until you think you've gotten what you need out of it, and then you can move on.